That's all I got.
I like
If
it.
you sit down now,
That
you
was
can
full
pretend you've been
speed.
here the whole time.
That's all I got tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can these be a little louder? Okay. He's gonna be loud. Good evening. Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, January 5th, 2026. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to go into executive session first, and after that, we will be coming back to open session at its conclusion, but no earlier than 6:30. So, Mark?
Mr. Chair, I move we go into executive session. A, pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Fire Chief David LeBlanc. B, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. HEA, Harwich Employees Association. C, pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. Assessors Map 82, Parcel R5, and D, pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Town Administrator.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Nita?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And as I said, we won't be back before 6:30 PM.
Is your head still screwed on?
Jen, thanks for your efforts with the Harwich Boardhouse of Pizza. Appreciate that.
Got so much to present.
I was happy to submit it.
That's good.
Well, 2026 sounds very futuristic.
We good? Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Relative to the executive session, we didn't come to a conclusion on any items that we discussed, so there's nothing to report out to the meeting. And before I do the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to note the passing of Angelo Lamontia. I knew Angelo for about 25 years. He was on the planning board, he became its chair, he was on the select board, he served on the finance committee, and his love for the town of Harwich was obvious to those who knew him, so I'd like to take a moment of silence for him. Thank you. And I'd like you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Start off with staff comments and announcements.
I'll start if no one would like to, Mr. Chair. If I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Quickly, I just want to say thank you from the Select Board to all the families who wrote us letters and notes, thank you letters and notes, regarding the preschool tuition program that these families took advantage of. And as I was reading each one of them, I got here a little early tonight, as I was reading each one of them, it dawned on me how important this is and how personal it is to these families. And, you know, our community is exceptional. This is no small token that we offer to the public. And I wish I could share every one of these with you, but like I said, they're pretty personal. But from the Select Board, I would like to offer our thank you for anyone and everyone who had taken the time to write us a letter to let us know that one of the decisions we made helped. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Tony, you have anything to report out?
I do not.
And nothing else from staff? All right, weekly briefing.
So, brief update on the sewer projects. I got a little more detailed update today from what's in the packet, so it goes out a little bit further in the future. But as it relates to Phase 3, 1 East, over in East Harwich, again, continuing work on Bay Road from, from Church Street to Pleasant Bay Road. The pump station there at the intersection with Church Street, but they're also going to be starting the next section, which is going to go from Pleasant Bay down to Bova Cove Road, heading towards Brewster/Orleans. On 2 West, no real changes there, still working on the Chestnut Street pump station and Pleasant Bay Road West. I did put in an updated schedule for Phase 3A, a little more comprehensive, has a little more information in terms of if we get permission to advertise in January, when we would be looking to have, bidder conferences and things like that leading up to selecting a contractor for Phase 3A before the end of June of 2026. So that'll stay in the packet. We'll have updates as things move forward with Phase 3A.
Okay, questions from town administrator?
Nope.
One more, Mr. Chair. So on the Brooks Academy Museum Library, the contractor will be, not the contractor, but the architect will be here on Monday to go up in a lift. They're going to start doing some analysis of the actual building. Once that's complete, I'm hoping to get a revised and updated schedule from them, once they have a little better idea of scope of what needs to get done through the course of this contract. So once I get that, I'll make sure that gets into the packet.
All right, just a thought, because it's premature now anyway, until you get that. I was hoping with that report to have Anita, Bob Nickerson, Sean, and you sit down to see what that looks like in terms of use of the building during the course of this, but you won't know that until you know what it is they're doing.
Right. Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, public comments and announcements.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sally Urbano, West Harwich.
Sally, before you begin, this has nothing to do with you. I had a request to record the meeting, and it is something that's embedded in state law that we don't normally read it because nobody normally requests this. You're hereby informed that the town will video and audio tape as well as live broadcast this public meeting. In addition, there is someone in the audience who plans on videoing and audio taping, and they have notified the chair prior to the start of the meeting so that everybody knows that that's the deal. Now, Sally, you go on.
Thank you. I'm here with an invitation to the residents of Harwich. On January 31st, 2026 now, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the Harwich Community Center, we are launching a town-wide Civic Villages Association called the Harwich 7. It's an apt name, but don't laugh, because I hear Bonanza playing in the background. And I see range riders, and I think it's a good
That'd be
name.
Rough Riders, but that's okay.
Rough Riders, yeah, I was thinking about that. Uncontrolled growth and development is being allowed through many avenues and all across 7 villages, some more than others. So we thought it's important to share our concerns, to gather in our strength, and to create action plans. We hope that you and you will attend this gathering and encourage others to attend so that we have each of the 7 villages represented. If you feel, as we do, as many of us do, frustrated and concerned, it's up to us to make the change. I'm looking forward to meeting our neighbors, informing this important civic group, and becoming proactive. This information will be posted. We have other people who are helping with this. They will be posting on social media sites and email chains. And where, again, it's the Harwich Community Center, January 31st, starting at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Are you allowing comments on the Penrose proposal?
You could, although in this particular time slot, nobody can respond to you, anything you're saying.
I didn't expect any response.
If you'd like to avail yourself of that, that's fine.
My name is Jan Raphael, and I am a unhappy abutter to the Penrose proposal. I live basically across the street. And I am not against, I'm not an NIMBY person, I am not against affordable housing, but I do believe that this is the wrong housing project in the wrong area. I think that everything that many people in the town have gone through with regard to POV, I'm standing here, but not very hopeful that I will be listened to. I will be writing a much longer letter. I understand I only have 3 minutes to talk, which I have to say I find absurd. I read Penrose's proposal, 280-plus pages, twice, mind you, and that I only get 3 minutes to talk about that is not benefiting the residents, okay? I think that with the POV4, the North Harwich project, the 29-acre salvage property, the warehouse to be developed on Queen Anne Road, the storage area to be developed on Queen Anne Road. I think there's some talk about something on Long Pond, near the Harwich-Brewster line. It's overwhelming. I mean, I think this is being pushed too fast, too quickly, and I think we all need to take a step back. This is a 99-year lease that Penrose has, and I think we should take a step back, let some of the ramifications of POV4 and some other of these developments take place. Rather than supposing what might happen, let's see in real time what will happen, and then proceed with perhaps some modification to this project. But I'll leave my comments there, but I'm hoping that I will be talking at future meetings. I hope there will be quite a number of meetings to come up. I know that there's one this Thursday, and I hope there will be more scheduled in the evening to allow fuller participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Patrick?
Yeah, good evening, Select Board. Patrick Ott in East Harwich. On your agenda tonight is the review of the LCP, and I've read it over. I'm just astounded and befuddled and confounded and amazed at the complexity and the depth and where that is going. Okay? And I want to just simply say, why do we live on Cape Cod? Are we here for the casinos? Are we here for the outlet stores? No, we're here for nature. We're here for the ponds, the seashore, and the woodlands. And those should be the #1 priority that's at the top of our heads every time we talk about the LCP or where Harwich is or what Harwich is doing. Nature. Without nature, why would we want to live here? Okay? That's it. So thank you.
I will say, as a precursor to them showing up, the folks on that committee spent an awful amount of time, long amount of time to try to weigh all of the priorities for the town, and that is absolutely one of the ones that they discussed, is what makes Harwich unique and how to keep it that way, as at the same time as developing in the manner that we want to. So you'll hear more about that tonight, but I think they did a mighty fine job at the end of getting everybody together on that. Matt?
Good evening. I'm Matt Sutphin, Harvich Center. Everything I would say right now is tangential to what the two previous speakers said. Tonight you have the LCP in front of you, and then you have a follow-up. The second piece on the agenda is support for Penrose. So my logic would tell me that it's time to absorb the LCP for a few days, a few weeks, whatever, before your board is perceived as proactive, overly proactive in developing what I've come to say is a big box. We look around and there are lots of these big boxes all of a sudden. This one at Penrose, PO4. The future 30 acres of Marceline salvage is just a scare to me. I see a stoplight there. I see another stoplight maybe further down. I see extensions of the on and off ramps at Route 6. I just see a cluster of events going on simultaneously at the welcome mat to Harwich. And I just would say that I realize Penrose has been in the works for a while. They've been working along, everybody's been working along at it. However, it started before we understood so much about Pine Oaks 4, before we understood about the future problems on Queen Anne Road, and before we really started to think about what could be going on 2, 3, 5 years out at Jimmy Marceline's salvage yard. I mean, so respecting the Affordable Trust's efforts to date, I ask that you consider putting the brakes on a little bit, possibly scaling it back. They have a rec hall. We have one down on Oak Street. I mean, there are certain things that can be scaled back, and this is a time to take a step back, look at everything that's in front of us, and say, how much of this do we want, but particularly, how much can we live without? And we're going to have to start thinking about living without, not always wanting more. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I go twice?
One more. I think you had like 28 seconds left.
That's fine. So, LCP's here, it's being presented and probably approved at town meeting. What's next? Does it just sit off on the side, go up on a shelf? How are you going to follow up in the LCP? Will the LCP be similar to a select board that directs actually what happens in Harwich? Will the LCP be the governing body of what Harwich evolves into? I think there needs to be the next question after the acceptance of implementation follow-up. Okay, thank you.
I believe that'll be part of the discussion. All right, any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll go to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move we vote to accept a gift for the community center from Aura Gaylord and Joseph Aruth Trust in the amount of $14,500.
Second.
With our gratitude. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just in case.
Latecomer. All right, how about the minutes?
And B, I move, Mr. Chair, that we approve the Select Board meeting minutes from December 22nd, 2025.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, moving on to the update of the town meeting and budget timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everything is on track. Our next major milestone, let me back up for a second. I just want to talk about the one item in red. Obviously, with the late certification of our free cash this year, certainly later than what we had anticipated, that kind of took the free cash analysis report took a little bit of a backseat to actually making sure we get the budget ready for presentation. The two aren't directly connected. It just is another data point, but doesn't really affect the budget development process. So we're continuing to work on that, and we'll present that hopefully later in January. Right now, our main effort this week is tightening up the budget, preparing the budget books for the board, the PowerPoint presentation, sources and uses and associated information that'll be presented to the board on Monday, the 12th, a week from tonight. And that'll really kick off the bulk of the discussion as we move closer to town meeting and finalizing the budget and getting all the questions asked and answered, and prepare to hand that off to the Finance Committee on or about the 2nd of February, so another month or so. So all is on track, and we're continuing to work the few of the milestones further down as we prep for town meeting, some of which we'll talk later tonight in terms of opening and closing the warrant for submission of articles for town meeting.
Questions for Town Administrator? Early February is good, by the way. All right. So this next part of the discussion is setting a date for the 2026 annual town meeting. I'm going to defer to Emily Mitchell, our town clerk, to talk about that, and then we can discuss it after she presents.
Good evening. Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. Thank you very much for having me. So as the board and the public is aware, the town has amended its charter to give the board more flexibility when setting the town meeting date. So up until the charter was amended at last year's town election, the charter called for the annual town meeting to be held on the first Monday in May, so it was very day specific. The charter has now been amended to give the board flexibility to set that day anytime in the first week in May. So with that enhanced flexibility in mind, I imagine the town is looking at, when we're setting the date, one, is there any impact on voter participation? And then two, does the day impact any other things like cost, staff, vendor availability? So to help guide your decision-making process, I put together two sets of information. The first was a local look back, so looking at Harwich data for the last 20 years, specifically for our annual town meetings. So looking at attendance, both for night 1 and night 2, or for our 2 Saturday meetings during COVID, looking at total articles, looking at whether there were any topics that may have driven higher than typical attendance. So that's kind of the first data point is our local data for the last 20 years. And then I also put out a survey to the Massachusetts Town Clerks Association. So we have a state association with the city and town clerks for all 351 municipalities. The survey I put out was specifically targeted towards communities that have an open town meeting form of government, right? That's the form that we have, and it's the form of government where participation might vary from meeting to meeting. So I put it out to the group. 100 town clerks responded. I was focused on looking specifically at a weekday, not necessarily a Monday, but weekday, generally speaking, annual town meeting in comparison to a Saturday annual town meeting, and got great feedback. So between the two data points, a couple of things that stood out to me. I was interested in our 2 Saturday town meetings that we held here in Harwich during COVID, and comparing those numbers to our typical Monday, Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday annual town meetings. And when I think back on those town meetings, I usually think of them positively, like community coming together, focused on governing even in chaos or confusion. But so I remembered them as highly attended. But when I looked at the actual numbers, I was surprised to see that our Monday attendance is actually quite a bit higher than those 2 Saturday dates. We have 20 years of data versus 2, but we were in the mid 400 range for our typical Mondays and just at around 300 for those 2 Saturday meetings. Our Tuesday attendance is still close to 300. So even when we pushed to a second day, it was sort of on par with the height of those 2 Saturdays. So I thought that was interesting. The other big takeaway for me was that we have some long meetings. Some of our longest meeting in the last 20 years hit almost 12 hours. So I'm thinking, even if we held a Saturday meeting with the idea that a Saturday meeting could be accomplished in one day, that if we're thinking realistically, it may not. So even if we go into a Saturday with the goal of there's some greater efficiency with a one-day town meeting, we could still be looking at continuing that meeting to a second day. So those were the pieces of information that stood out from our local data. When I was looking at responses from the 100 town clerks who responded to the survey, again, I was really specifically looking for that feedback on a Saturday versus a weekday. So you have kind of a summary of those responses in your packet as well as the data itself. But broadly speaking, most communities do hold their meetings on a weekday. About 45 of the 100 tried out Saturday meetings like Harwich did during COVID. Of those 45 that tried a Saturday, 41 have gone back to a weekday. Overwhelmingly, the feedback was that Saturday versus weekday did not impact voter participation, that they were seeing comparable numbers no matter what day of the week. And then the other standout from the survey response was that participation is often driven by what is on the warrant. So key takeaways for me from both sets of data is we have our core group of people who are going to attend annual town meeting no matter when we hold it. If we held it on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the morning, we'd have folks there participating enthusiastically. I would be one of them. And then we have folks who are topic driven. So if there's a topic that matters to them, they're going to show up and they're going to participate in that discussion and participate in that vote. And then there are always going to be people who are available and people who are not available on given days, that there's not a particular day or time that will work for everyone. From that Massachusetts Town Clerks Association survey, some of the feedback for a Saturday meeting that I heard in multiple responses was Saturdays can be tough for families with children because a lot of children's extracurricular activities, sports practice, tournaments, plays, concerts, those activities tend to happen on a Saturday. When we're looking at a first or second Saturday in May, that's often the first nice weekend we are coming out of, 5 months of dreary, cold grayness, and so folks want to do their yard cleanup, or they want to be on the bike path, or they want to be doing outdoor activities, and perhaps attending a town meeting isn't at the top of their priority list to enjoy that day. And another thing that stood out was there are some religious groups who either observe the Sabbath on a Saturday or whose day of worship is on a Saturday. And so that could be a barrier to participation. So my takeaway was day isn't really the primary driver of participation. And so if that's not driving participation, what else should the board consider when setting a date? So there were certainly reported differences for cost. Can be a higher staff overtime, higher costs for vendors, things like that. Probably not really substantial, but we pay attention to our dollars. That it can be more burdensome on town staff, both in the town clerk's office and election workers, but many town departments are involved in successfully setting up and running a town meeting. And that it can also be more challenging to contract with or contact on the day of if there are issues, the third-party vendors we work with. So we contract for sound, we contract for accessibility, and importantly this year we will also be contracting for our town clickers. The electronic voting clickers we'll have in place for the first time this year. So I think a number of things for the board to consider and a lot of data for you to pull from to help make your decision.
I believe Anita had a question.
Thank you. Being that, and I know you're aware of this, that once the Finance Committee and the Select Board get done with their jobs and putting the warrant together, it's Michael Ford's meeting. And you have contacted Michael Ford and his response to this?
Yes, so Michael Ford and I have talked a couple of times.
Okay.
His feedback to me was essentially that he's open to whatever the board chooses. He didn't express a strong preference for a Saturday or a weekday meeting. One thing he mentioned, and that also came up in the survey, was that it might be worth considering if the board continues with a weekday meeting day to start earlier, and that might help the evenings feel less taxing. But he did not express an opinion strongly one way or the other and was happy to go with whatever the board decided for a meeting day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other comments? When do you need to know that? Would you like us to discuss it tonight, or can we absorb what you said and take it to next week?
I will certainly defer to the board. I think it would be helpful to have sooner than later, so we're looking at starting to contract for those services. The clickers themselves have to be procured. They reach a dollar threshold. We will be soliciting quotations for renting for this meeting. And in order to finalize those project specifications, we'll need a date set. So we are, looking both for third-party vendor contracting and procurement, and then also as we publicize the related dates for our town election calendar sooner than later.
Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if my colleagues are prepared, but I'm prepared tonight to move forward with a vote. I probably consider myself a traditionalist.
Have at it.
And I think that 12-hour meeting, or almost 12-hour meeting, we all were prepared with our overnight bags. So that was an interesting few nights. But with that said, I'd propose that we have our annual town meeting as usual, the first Monday in May, which would be May 4th, 2026.
At?
It's typically 7 PM.
It is typically 7 p.m.
And I know what Mike said. I just wonder if that hurts more than it helps.
I don't mean to interrupt, through you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's essential for you to set the time.
Right, the date's more
This
important than
evening.
the time, right? Let's go with the
Let's
first
go with
motion.
May 4th.
Is that a motion? Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to hold the annual town meeting for the town of Harwich for 2026 on May 4th, which is a Monday, the first Monday. Any further discussion?
The only thing I'll say is thank you for your work. It was eye-opening, you hear how wonderful those 2 outdoor meetings were, but when you look at the numbers, right, the numbers don't lie.
I was surprised.
Yeah, and I did a little community outreach myself, both online and in person, and I got about a 50-50 split. So, there's merit on both sides, but I just wanted to make sure I thanked you for all your work, because that was a lot of information. Thank you.
Mark?
Okay. I agree with the May 4th date. I think at the 6 PM start time, we have a better chance, possibly, of finishing it up at one night. So I'm in favor of a 6 PM start.
Tony?
Just related to the start time, although I don't anticipate this at this point, but if something should arise that would require a special before the annual that needed to get done, obviously, if we pick the time too early, it could end up putting the special even earlier. Like I said, I don't anticipate that happening. We'll probably know before we have to set the time, but just something to keep in mind, should something come up that would require a special before the annual.
To that point, in our glorious history for this near term over the last quarter century, the specials have always been tucked away on the second night after you began the second night's meeting, like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So if we did that, I can understand that. I also want to thank Emily, because she and I talked about this quite a bit. The idea of changing too much all at the same time was brought up, because for everybody who glided past the word clicker, we're going to have electronic voting capacity at this meeting for the first time we've ever had it. And it's probably more of a gamble than people might imagine to try to change the date that you're doing it, the personnel that are going to be involved with it, and the fact that we're going to be using a process that we have never used before. So it makes some sense to kind of stick your toe in the water first and then see what we want to do, because charter allows us every year. With that, you have anything further?
I'm good. I appreciate all the information.
Okay. With that, we'll take a vote then. All in favor of May 4th?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for all the work you put into that.
Thank you.
Okay. Speaking of dates, we got to set dates for the opening and the closing of the annual town meeting warrant and submission of articles. And in the past, I know we haven't discussed this directly, Tony, but in the past, we have bounced around the idea that the select board could almost, with impunity, put an article in like on April 1st, and that everybody else had to adhere to a deadline. So kind of like your thoughts about the submission dates and what who they represent as much as what the dates are.
Well, I mean, the board always has the option to reopen and accept things. I think it's more about trying to keep us on a timeline. Right now, we're tracking, I think we're planning on presenting next Monday, I'll say the placeholders, which are, you know, essentially the short title of various articles. We're at 54 right now. The final form of articles, which is all the language and all of that, is due on February 13th. So, you know, setting...
Everybody, citizens too, or?
Well, citizens petitions can come in almost at any time, and I think we're obligated to take those, but, you know, ideally, it you know, can throw things off, so they're a little bit of an outlier, but I think for the majority of folks, you know, setting the, you know, opening and closing of the warrant for submission of articles keeps us on a timeline to ensure that we have a smooth, organized process. Articles go through legal review and everything else to make sure they're sufficient. And obviously, we have further, you know, timelines down the road of getting the book to the printers and all of that. So part of this is to prevent a fire drill, keep people thinking about it. You know, we'll be notifying all the, I'll say, proponents of the list that we're tracking to, you know, get their formal article language and everything to us as quickly as possible, and not, you know, the day before they're due if possible. So so it just helps keep everything on track and have an orderly process, so we have a well-oiled machine as we get ready to present on May 4th.
And you want to state that date again so that everybody understands February?
So the suggestion is to open the warrant now for, you know, submission of articles, close it on February 2nd. The final form of articles, which is all the language stuff, is by charter, is February 13th. So that's in the tracker that is in the packet.
I would dearly love to be ahead of the charter.
Mr. Chair,
Pete?
I move that we open the annual town meeting warrant for submission of articles on January 5th, 2026, to close on February 2nd, 2026.
Second.
At close of business.
The close of business, which is at 4 or 4:30 p.m.? 4 p.m.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the date for warrant submissions? And thank you for coming up with this, too, because like I said, we haven't had a really great track record of sticking to timelines in the past. I mean, going way back. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Before we go to new business, and so I don't have the harbor master sleeping over, if we could bump his agenda item up. You're on.
Oh, that'd be great.
Grab the clicker.
As we're waiting, good evening, Mr. Chair, good evening, Select Board and Town Administration. John Harker, Harbor Master, back again for another presentation in regards to the Harbor Master Department fee increase adjustment for the next year. Oh, clickers here. So thank you again for this opportunity to sit before you and present some follow-up information off of our last discussion. And I just wanted to start off again on this slide 2. This was originally provided to you all the first time that we sat together, and just wanted to recap a little bit for some additional clarification. So this is a proposed adjustment that mirrors a historical schedule and methodology that has been used before and presented and approved by the Select Board in the town before. Again, looking back at this historical methodology, looking back and getting input from different community partners, community beneficiaries, we find, and actually looking throughout the Cape communities, we find this to be a fair and well-supported model. And considering the costs that there have been, currently are, and will be in the future, expenses and expenditures that will occur at the harbor and within the town. I want to just point out that bottom green box in the terminology that's within there. I should have rephrased this statement of a 2% annual adjustment for a 5-year period equaling 10%. I know that can sound, it looks a little confusing. Yes, it's going to be a 10% in the original proposal, a flat adjustment proposed for 5 years. So that's a 10% adjustment starting in fiscal year 2027. That would remain the same for 5 years. Then it wouldn't be 10% 1 year, then a compounding another 10% into 20% in 2028, nor was it proposed at a 2% increase starting 2027 and then reaching 10% at 2030. So it's just a 10% flat rate that's held till 2030, or respectively looked at that point going forward. So I just wanted to clarify that because I know that there was some questions from people that had reached out to the department and myself. We have not made a change in rates again since 2021. And in my recommendations is a re-examination of these rate adjustments and not projected until after 2030 or if necessary. These are the provided recommendations that were discussed after our last meeting. These were topics and several questions that you all had that I wanted to follow up on. This will be the sequence of the presentation to assure I effectively address each one of those items. And it allows me also to inject recommendations and findings along the way. So starting with the first one, it was to your question, Mr. Chair. Yes, we can legally provide such a bifurcated system of rates for our town slips, but just not for our moorings as noted before. I have created a recommendation that is focused on non-commercial slip occupants. We would not be applying these recommendations to other rates outside the slips, as these are typically flat, low cost, and one-time payments for resources that are noted. And the next slide will actually show exactly those highlighted rates that's in that Appendix B that was provided before, and the change standing at that 10% recommended with an arrowed rate over to that recreational slip rate that we'll be discussing. Next, I did do a re-examination of regional, basically Cape Cod various fees and increased intervals of each town, which I'll cover in slides 5 and 9. And as requested, I did reach out to town departments to find out how they determine their rates and the applicability of their practices to the harbor dynamics and their customers, which I'll cover shortly on slide number 6. And furthermore, I had a scenario-based discussion with the staff along with comparison considerations, moving from an incremental increase versus a flat base increase as we used before, and this will be covered in slide 8. And lastly, we did find an opportunity to implement some rates adjustments as early as July 1st, and then progressively move into adjustments as the season historically flows through a billing process, which, as I noted before, for next year has already started, but there are sequential steps that will be going forward. As I mentioned before, here's the current proposed rate. We had 48 of 64 rates that we're going to, or what we're proposing for adjustment. And the one with the arrow are the rates which have divided optionality that we'll be discussing later on. Just to provide some context as to how we landed in the data here, here's a snapshot of the larger working document. I'd kind of discussed before how we had a bit of a working group at the harbor where we examined each town, made a tabular Excel sheet to kind of cross-examine and have comparability to the best of our ability with which each town and with each rate. And as you can see, it's side-by-side comparison as best as we can. This is Falmouth's actual sheet that we're using here. And then to the right is an example of another town fee schedule. And as I commented before, it's a challenge to try to think that town rates are kind of apples to apples across the Cape or across the municipalities in Massachusetts. And then you can see that in this comparative rate taking, there's other considerations to take in, such as utilities, geographical location, marine services. This is Barnstables on our bottom right-hand corner, and I know it's difficult to see in the screen there, but hopefully you can see it in any printed or material on your laptops. So we begin with comparison modeling by looking at our department's best management practices. So we looked across all the departments in the town, from speaking with other department personnel and looking at the online portals for, say, memberships or stickers. There was a mixture of focus on providing kind of proof of residency or tax paying. For example, residence requirements versus taxpayers. We can see for residency sometimes lease agreements or utility bills can be provided to suffice that requirement. But that does not show proof of tax paying from a property owner. Furthermore, trusts through another layer of complexity in trying to examine if someone's a taxpayer versus resident. Under some circumstances, non-taxpayers found through the assessor's database, we know can be in trusts. So now we have to find some type of proof that trust that proportionality is there, that that person is actually paying taxes. So we looked regionally as well, and annual verifications of each residency and tax payments varied. And from departments and towns, this is something that I've casted a wider net and reached out to other harbor master departments. And there was no real consistency from across the Cape. So what we're looking at is focusing on a consistent and well-defined delineation of fees, and that would be taxpayer and non-taxpayer. And on the next slide, you'll see the difference is a 45% non-taxpayer versus 55% taxpayer for recreational slips. With the caveat is that through this examination, it was from the information we currently have, which may not be completely accurate. And I say that being that this is something that you could have a leaseholder that has 2 properties, and the primary residency that they provided us could be an off-Cape one, but they could have a residency in Harwich, which they're paying tax on. So we just don't have that clarity at this point. And just so you know, from a brainstorming standpoint, a possible solution in finding this clarity for us, if we move forward with the taxpayer and non-taxpayer, is to initially bill everybody as a non-taxpayer and then have them provide that information annually to the department to then have them be eligible for that discount or that lower tax bracket. So that's just one conceptual thought we have going forward to address the differences and not having kind of to your question, Mr. Handler. So once provided, we give them that difference. I'm going to have a little difficulty seeing this one too. So for those not familiar with the composition of the harbor, you can kind of see in the left Harwich Harbor occupancy composition, recreational, passenger, charter, and commercial as it's divided, and 80% of that is recreational. We have 4 ferry passengers total, 11 charter, and 41 commercial. On the top right, you'll see the Sacotuga Harbor recreational slips, that 45 to 55 split. Again, I think through a little bit closer examination, getting information provided to us, I think that number is probably going to move a little bit more to the higher end of residents taxpayers and non-taxpayers. I think it's probably going to move to the 60-40 or even higher. And we can also see the diversity of the composition of all the other slip owners and what that is from a taxpayer to non-taxpayer when we look at passenger vessels to commercial vessels and so on and so forth. So it's our recommendation at this point to stay with a rate adjustment that would not be re-examined for a period of time, 5 years presumably. The last one was supposed to be 4 years. We're going to be at 5 going on 6 if one is adopted at this point. Not only does this provide consistency for billing and revenue projection for the staff in the town, but more importantly, it allows for consistency in budgeting and billing and expectations for our customers. This would be a slow roll of this transition, and it could begin in July with an implementation of a flat rate adjustment. I think some challenges that we would assume that we'd see are some of the rates could increase in July, but they would be rates such as short-term tie-ups, tuna permits, the ones that really aren't going to move the needle initially on any kind of revenue coming into the town. Any reservations that we had, say for long-term transients post-July, we would obviously apply that, or wherever that line would lay for any kind of adjustments that the board would find suiting. So here are the towns in the Cape with taxpayer versus, or resident and non-taxpayer, non-resident rates. Again, at the most common and valid comparison length, which is that 30-foot vessel and slips. And that's the same kind of modeling that I used last time when we had this. And I used a rate for a non-taxpayer and a taxpayer of 5% and 15% respectively, so 5% increase or adjustment for the taxpayer and a 15% for the non-taxpayer. And you can see those increases would be from $113 to $119 for taxpayer and $113 to $130 per foot for non-taxpayer. And with these rates, Harwich can stay consistent and slightly below the average of other towns using that split rate system. To note, there are some kind of, I did some rough math before coming over here, and the differences in some of the towns was 14% interest for Falmouth, Barnstable was at 17, Dennis 45%, and Wellfleet 35%. As you can see, these are the two proposals that we have going forward and the provided recommendations. On the top of the page also, you'll see a little bit of a breakdown going forward with, and proposal 1 is going to stick with what we came before with the 10% for the 5 years. This would cover that 48 out of 64 fees. Again, the total revenue for the 20 to 50 foot recreational slips would be at $631,000. And the estimated revenue for all of these, the increase annually would be anywhere from $135,000 to $150,000. I think that that's probably going to be at the higher end. Again, when we discussed, we gave you the slip minimums when we did our projections, but a 20-foot slip can have a boat up to 24 feet, a 30-foot, 34, and then 40 and higher. Proposal 2 shows a division of taxpayer and non-taxpayer rates with the 5% and the 15%. Again, this will be a revenue just slightly below, and that'll be at 629 and 820, with same revenue pocketed of 135 to 150. Now, I will note that that difference in between those two revenues is only $1,940. There's a misprint on the next page. I apologize for that. It says $7,940. These are just some more charts that we've used before. As you can see on the top, I did the split in between the 5% and the 15%, showing the composition of different vessels, how many we have per category for that recreational slip. On the bottom left-hand corner is going to be your mooring rates. Those are another chart that I provided before at the 10%, and that would not be able to be adjusted. And then on the bottom right, furthermore, the other charter vessels, commercial vessels at the 10% rate. So the final recommendations are to be looking at the difference in revenue of $1,940. Apologize for the typo. The town slipped rates with an increase of the $84,300. The mooring rates would be a slight increase because of the lack of adjustment there. The various other rates at the 10% would be up to $45,162. If you can see from the last presentation, these numbers are a little bit higher. That's because I included all the different harbors as well. Witchmere and Allen only accounted for about 9,000, but I added those before we solely focused on Saquatucket Harbor. And with that, take any questions.
Mark?
Sure. John, thank you so much for the research. I think it's a nice thing for the residents to know that, we're starting to zero in on the taxpayers versus non-taxpayers. The fact that, we're at 45% non-taxpayers, which I agree will go down, but gives us a sense of, how many people who don't pay taxes are using that marina. I just have a quick question. If I have a 30-foot boat, am I going to pay, and I'm a taxpayer, am I going to pay 5% more next year or 10% more?
If you're a taxpayer, it'd be 5%.
Yes, 5%. So you had mentioned in here that the rates are going up 10% for ’27. Is that because you've aggregated both the taxpayer and non-taxpayer and it averages out to 10%? I just remember seeing, let's see, 2% for a 5-year period equals a 10% increase. I'm just a little bit confused about that.
Yes, thank you for the question. That goes back to, hopefully I was trying to clarify that a little bit more in the beginning. Originally, it was just a flat 10% across the board for all scheduled fees. We discussed, let's look at the ones that could be adjusted, let's say those larger revenue ones. And then we took the exclusion action of saying no commercial charter, let's look at just the recreational. So all those other scheduled fees, those would remain at 10% to then maintain that revenue level that we were looking at or proposing. And then the taxpayer, non-taxpayer would only be, I think that's slide 4 where the arrow was, just for the recreational sector of that. So the 20-foot, 30-foot, 40-foot, and 50-foot slips within the 3 harbors. So again, if you were paying your waterways user fee, if you were going to do summer transient, if you were going to be an offloading permit, say for the commercial, that's 10%. For a taxpayer with a slip in Saquatucket, Allen Harbor, or Witchmere, it would be 5% after proof of tax paying and residency is provided to the department.
And non-taxpayers would have what increase?
15%.
15. Just one last question. You're going to discuss this with the Waterways Committee, get their input as well?
Yes.
And actually, one other question. 10% over 5 years. Say like, does that preclude you, say like some circumstances change, does that preclude a second look at this maybe 2 or 3 years out?
It definitely wouldn't preclude us, but it's something that I would probably want to hold fast to. And sticking with that 5%, I do feel a commitment to the slip, and any of the users are going to be impacted by these fees, to hold that expectation for what we're talking about at a minimum of 5 years.
And that would kind of be in extraordinary circumstances.
Absolutely.
But very good. I just want to compliment you on all your research. This is great. Great work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
No, I appreciate all the detailed information. I was going to touch on the last thing Mark talked about. So as much as I can agree with you, and I'm not looking to nickel and dime folks, if something unanticipated occurs, then we certainly would look at rates prior to 2030 if applicable. So, but again, it's not anticipated, so we'll deal with it if we have to. But otherwise, no, I appreciate the information, and I appreciate the opportunity to give the taxpayers a break on their leisure activities, so thank you.
So, sure.
Herb Raphael, Harwich Center. I'm not a boat owner and I'm not an economist, but I know a little bit of math. And despite, I appreciate the presentation, but I never heard the word inflation. So if this is a flat rate increase, that means it goes up 2% a year for 5 years. That's 10%, if I understand it correctly. But if inflation is 3%, that means over 5 years, that's 15%, which means you're giving a big discount to the slip owners. So 5 years from now, they're paying a lot less than they're paying now. So it's one thing to increase the rate with inflation, but to just increase the rates and ignore inflation, which so happens has been out of control for the past few years, is basically an annual rate decrease. That's how I understand it. So I'd appreciate an explanation of how these two things fit together.
Sir. So we did not look at having an increase for several reasons, as I noted before: consistency, dependency, expectations. But 10% this year and 10% and a consistent 10% over time, when I kind of was looking at the math of it, was more beneficial. Say if I'm doing 10% this year, 10% for the next 5 years, vice a 2% or 3% one year. The next year, 3%, that's 6%. The next year, another 3%, that's 9%. Cumulatively, the revenue that we would actually gross would be more if you're using a standard 10%. Now, I may be wrong on my math, but again, I kind of lean back on the inflation part of it, yes, being incorporated into the calculations of understanding we're looking at this fee adjustment, not only for what has happened or what we've incurred, what's present, and what's going to be in the future.
Just to clarify it, because I didn't understand it that way, you're proposing in year one to impose the increase and then revisit that in 5 years later. You're not
Correct.
proposing to go 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%.
Correct.
Okay.
It's going to be the same, the rate that we're going to be proposing, or that we're proposing now, that if
It's gonna hit in year
adopted,
one.
it'll hit year one and it will stay the same rate for the next 5 years. But that's still a 10% increase from what the rate is now, which is a 2021 rate.
So, next step. When do you need an answer for the fees?
We don't have many other fees. So for instance, one of our larger fees,
When do you want to hear from us to vote?
Do a public hearing.
So I think our next step is for the board to okay us to schedule the public hearing for January
That's what I'm driving at.
26th. So some of these are important from budgeting standpoint and everything else, so at least in
This was a
our,
presentation, this was not a public hearing.
correct. So we're
Get to do
looking.
this again, Joe.
prepared.
Slim down.
Mr. Chair, if possible, before we have the public hearing, I think it's important to have the Waterways Committee to weigh in. I kind of hear what Mr. Herb said about the factor of inflation, but your Waterways Committee has people who own boats, have a good feel, and I'd like, before we have the public hearing, to get their input, if that would be possible, so.
Absolutely. And just for everyone's reference, I have reached out to the Waterways Committee. I did let them know prior to the last meeting. We didn't have, from a scheduling standpoint, since that Waterways Committee only meets every third Wednesday of each month, it didn't saddle, the last meeting that we all had saddled kind of in between the two. It was going to be presented in December, but there wasn't a quorum for that meeting, so now it's going to be presented to them on January 21st.
So the 26th would work.
Yeah. We can anticipate that. And so the public understands this because we all do up here. Fees have to have some basis in reality to incurred cost. It isn't just an inflation factor overall in general. We have to be able to demonstrate, in the extreme, we can't make a profit off of our operation. So that has to be considered in conjunction with what he's proposing. It'll come back to that discussion again when we have a hearing, but it isn't purely like we want to stay ahead of the curve so we can charge more, because we can't do that necessarily if we can't demonstrate it costs us that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, a question before
Yeah,
John
sure.
leaves. John, thank you for being here. Just a clarification for me. I'm a resident, I'm a renter. I don't pay taxes, but I have a long-term lease renting a home in Harwich for 5 years. Is that considered taxpayer rate or non-taxpayer rate?
Non-taxpayer.
So it's non-taxpayer rate, okay. So you need to be proving that you pay taxes in the town, residential tax in the town of Harwich. Thank you.
And that would be my suggestion when we get to the hearing, is whatever it is you're going to design as an application form for it, because this is a critical difference if we go in that direction. The statement has to be right up there at the top that when you're looking at this, this is a gross figure subject to reduction if you are able to prove the following. I mean, just whatever it is you're going to be doing, you should be up there so people don't panic that what happened.
100%. We'll have that done, sir.
Okay. Any further comments? We appreciate all the information.
My only comment would be if for any reason the Waterways has difficulty meeting on the 21st, then perhaps we could post a joint meeting on the 26th if that works for them. But hopefully they can meet on the 21st.
Yeah, I'd like to get a recommendation rolling into it.
Correct.
I'll reach out to them prior to the 21st just to make sure that we're on track for a quorum.
Perfect.
Good work, thank you.
Appreciate the time.
All right, rolling back up the agenda. Very happy to see this on the agenda. Joyce, you want to come up?
Let's do it.
And Christine?
I'm gonna, let me sit here, maybe because of the, when I advance the slides, can I just wave it around, you think? What's the best way to? Oh, it'll go up above. There you go. You oriented me to the, perfect. Hello. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Joyce McIntyre, Chair of the Local Planning Committee.
Christine Flynn, Town Planner.
You want to introduce the members who are here so that
Yes, we have
put a face on
we
them?
have many of us here. Barbara, you want to start? Barbara Nickerson, members of our committee. Mary Jones. Ed, who needs no introduction. Anybody else here? No? Wonderful to be here. This is happy stuff. So, you know, a positive side of this taking 3 years to do is we've all gotten to know each other quite well, and also really dig into this plan, both as it's being made and as we're here with our final draft. So I'm going to talk us through, and then hopefully we have a lot of time for a discussion and questions. So I'm going to tell you, summarize sort of the LCP for folks who may be coming into this later. We're going to review a bit of how the housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan fits into that and why that was done historically, sort of on behalf of the town. Briefly, I think a lot of folks, because this has been a very transparent and public process, is aware of how this plan has been put together and sort of the data that's gone in that, but we'll cover that briefly. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the spring timeline, and really my focus tonight is to talk about how the LCP can be used and kind of talk about the data and some of the information is in there and how the themes are packaged as we go into the spring and start using this thing formally. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So I want to start with just the most heartfelt, deep, genuine thanks to the committee itself, the select board. You've all been key in this, and Harwich's residents for really engaging in this process at the highest, most respectful, thoughtful. We didn't always agree, but everything that makes you proud about Harwich really went into this plan. Every single member of the committee has, at a time, taken the baton of leadership and truly moved this towards the finish line. I am incredibly proud to have served with these members on the committee, and when I look back on what we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 years and the challenges that have been varied, I am so grateful to them. I want to specifically thank Jeff, who has been a wonderful liaison and very steady and wise and how to navigate some of the challenges we've faced. I've gotten to know all of you well, which I appreciate as we've incorporated your feedback and perspectives into the plan, and most credit goes to the residents who have from the Cranberry Festival to the grocery store and everything in between, really embraced this process, been incredibly honest, kind, and plain spoken about where Harwich is and where we're going, and it not to sound too populist about it, but this really is the people's plan, so I'm thankful for that. Thank you. The organization, just again to kind of remind everyone, you've heard this, and we won't dwell on this too long, the nature of the plan is dictated by that it has to be ultimately certified by the Cape Cod Commission. The state is involved, and there's also some convention and sort of these planning documents. So it's, which I've learned about, broken down into 3 systems: natural systems, built systems, community systems, and you can see these sort of different topics within that. So that's how the plan overall is organized. To remind everyone what's gone on in the last 3 years, so we had a professional consultant with Ty and Bond, of which the town very generously supported that financially. They sort of guide some of and generate some of the writing. This is really the people, the committee and the community really drove it, but they organize it, so to speak. Ty and Bond did. We started by sort of high-level data collection. You'll remember the blue postcards that were circulated. You know, what do you love about Harwich? What concerns you about Harwich? That then was used to generate sort of the best quality survey we can, which is in your packet, which is at the end of the plan, if you want to dig into that data, where we had a remarkable amount of responses that we really refer to as our quantitative data. So, you know, kind of zooming in on what are our issues, where is Harwich at, what are our challenges, and where do we need to go. And so this is not just pulled out of the ether. There is a lot of data driven by it. And then in that professional sort of process, there were multiple workshops. That's what a lot of the sticky notes are for. Mary is doing them too, which many of you participated in and came and to. And then in the revision process, you know, a very highly engaged discussion. And again, one of the advantages of this taking a year longer than we expected is as time unfolds and issues face the town, the plans have been able to be used and referenced and kind of knocked around, which they're supposed to do. So that's a positive. This is actually a slide from Ty and Bond talking about sort of some of the focus of these visioning workshops that are facilitated in a very specific way. So again, if you're not hearing about this, if this is new to you, this is kind of a partnership between the community and the professional consultants at really, truly the highest level has generated this. So the local comprehensive plan, when the select board first appointed the committee more than 3 years ago, it made sense to undertake the housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan at the same time. There's a lot of overlap. Financially, it made sense, and we did that. The housing production plan, as you know, was approved by you all. It has been filed with the state. The open space and recreation plan, I believe Christine's just putting the finishing touches on.
Yes, we have received conditional approval
Yeah.
from DCS, and we have some minor modifications that we need to update, but.
So, you know, it makes sense that you're not going to be doing these things in silos, that they're all done together because they overlap, you know. So when you see these different acronyms thrown around, that's what makes sense. The timeline. We are here to talk with you. We do need, we will be on the planning board's formal agenda in the coming weeks for their formal endorsement. Though the plan has been widely referenced and talked about in the community, this is part of our spring socialization plan, and then we are, do anticipate being on the warrant for approval at town meeting. This is really where I want to spend the most time, how the LCP can be used. So I have learned, and we learned, that the sort of modern standard in this document is that it's a living document. So though it was all close to 300 pages were put in your sort of tactile packet, it's meant to sort of be digital, searchable. It doesn't read like a doc, it reads kind of like a slide deck, and that is the standard for a variety of reasons. Visually, I think to break it down also so that it's searchable, so like the Control F, so like if you were looking about waterways or something like that, and you wanted to say, okay, what do we have in that about the plan, then you don't have to like sort of finger through that it's interactive digitally. There are big statements in it. A community vision, this is not the complete sentence of it, this is, a community vision, a growth policy. You have to have a growth policy as part of the plan, which I've learned. So that's in there. So big, high-level concepts. What is Harwich? Harwich is a small town with a history of innovation, long sort of community ties, history. To counter a little bit what was said earlier, we heard over and over again, and got the sense of, what really matters in Harwich, not only is our environment, but our people, our children, our older generations that have been here for a long time, not in a closed sense, but that Harwich has a specific culture, and that is important, and we want to protect that. And those are the kind of things that went into the community vision and growth policy. So when you're looking at this document, that's one piece of it. So very high level, what are our values as a town? What is important to us? Those are in that document. Challenges. Recognizing that it is 2026 and the world is, changing, and there are unique financial and ecologic pressures on the town. What are our challenges? So you'll see that in the plan as well. And those are listed here, things we know like housing affordability, managing growth, resource protection, climate impacts, village character, the sewer, which is, decades-long interaction. So you see the challenges. It also, I really want to point out to, and I think this is kind of an undersung use of this endeavor, it is an amazing collection of data at one period in time. And that's probably, in one sense, what we most paid the consultant for, is to bring our census data. This is a traffic traffic study collation and a visual. So if you want to look at when the traffic's the best case, best data we have, when were the traffic studies done in Harwich? What are the most recent, and where did they go in town? That is in the plan. So as different committees and volunteers and concerned citizens are interacting with this, it's a encyclopedia for, in some sense, of a lot of different information about a variety of things in town in one place. And that is incredibly valuable. And again, driven by the digital format. So you will see, and these have been pulled out in various discussions in town and things like that, strategies, concepts, and I'm going to get into that a little more. We're kind of drilling down into more specific information. So, you have our values, you have a lot of our data, and then you have, say, this is about housing, smart growth principles. What do those look like? And you can have some very specific bullet points that, again, are based in, not out of the ether, but, what the community told us, high-level interactions with the various boards and committees in the town, and then high-level, discussions in the LCP over these 3 years. Key issues going forward is also an interesting sort of component of the plan. Again, searchable, and I pulled this slide out in specifically. This is, I think Jeff used the analogy. These are guidelines. They're not, the regulatory authority of the select board. We serve at your discretion. This is your document. This is a broad document. There are specific suggestions, but often we found ourselves using the word consider, contemplate, because knowing that situations change and information changes, and the best decision for the town this evolves, right? So these are guidelines, and so when you look at these sort of things that are pulled out visually, someone will say, well, I disagree with shuttle buses to address seasonal demands for parking. This is a contemplative planning strategic document, not one must do that. So, and the visuals we talked a lot about in the committee. If time was unlimited, and you had unlimited sort of effort, I would change some of the visual emphasis in the document, but that's what we've got from the consultant, and I think largely it works very, very well, so hold some of that lightly. This is the most important kind of granular information that I want to point out in this format. So you have all that information that we've talked about conceptually. Those different categories, like community design, are then broken down towards the second third of the document. a goal. A goal is taken from our visioning, right? From all that work that we talked about. You take the goal, say, to protect and enhance unique Harwich character, built natural environment, village context. You have these objectives that are supported by that, and then you have the actions. All right, so this is something, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about it. If you're serving on a committee, we would like this document to support you. If you have a specific, say, the Waterways Committee or Historic Commission or whatever, golf, good work that you're doing that all of this town runs by volunteers, it is helpful with your input to then look at what are those actions, what, this is the community's values, these are the objectives, these are our goals, what we want to do going forward, and what actions might get us there, okay? So that's in one format. And as you go farther into the document, we're blessed to have very high-level consultant experience who are members of Harwich, who live in Harwich, and members of the committee. Brian Sheld, Mary Jones, Garrett Curran really pushed us to say, hey, the highest level of this kind of planning is to take those actions and start to prioritize them. And I'm tremendously grateful to the committee for that. And this is a process which is a validated process where you start to prioritize those actions. So instead of saying, hey, there are 50 things that are important to do about this topic in Harwich, here's the 50, and then how do you start to rank them? And it's a simple 2x2, 4 being, and you can revisit this, but 4 being very high impact, and 4 being 4 and 4 very feasible. So if something's really going to help the town and it's very feasible, you get a 4 and a 4. And if something's minimal impact and we're never going to be able to do it, it's a 1 and a 1. So if you can kind of understand that. And so every action that is based on these values that you all told us then was prioritized. And obviously this isn't going to project well, but it looks good in the PDF. And it's coordinated by color, right? So this is water resources. This has to do with ponds and stuff like that. So if you're, say on the Conservation Commission or something like this, we hope that this supports your work, and as your agendas evolve in these coming years, to say, okay, what was the high-level planning? What were the community's values? What were the highest impact issues? Is what we're doing kind of in line with that? So, and these are color coordinated, and again, very searchable. And it doesn't read like the first half of the plan does, but this is really the meat and the potatoes, and hopefully the highest impact of the plan in the second half or second third, last 2/3 of it. The question about implementation, and this is based on implementation, and actually, something we bring to you, the select board, as we serve at your discretion with this work done, and you have this ranking system that was done. What might make sense to you to, at what period of time to revisit these and say, hey, how are we doing as a town and as a community on these highest impact, highest feasibility issues that face the community as a whole. And to leave you with this, at the end of this exercise, Harwich is really it's certainly about our environment, but it's also truly about our people and how our people and our environment interact. And when you look at these, our priorities and our values as a community, it's all interconnected. And when you're talking about one thing, I think the plan really shows how it impacts our people and how it interacts our environment. That is what the plan is supposed to address. And I'm appreciative of all the work that has gone into that. With that, questions? And I left these I thought about these pictures very specifically. You have some of our forefathers with their cranberry bushels, and then we have 2 sets of our youth sports teams off the rec Instagram page, and that I think that really embodies Harwich in many, many ways.
So before we get to the questions, and as a high-level comment, first of all, you and I did talk about this, and
Yes.
This is exactly what I was hoping for. It was delivered the way you've discussed, because it is a process. I don't know where the canard came from that we got to worry about how we're going to make those people enforce that plan, because we've been through several of them. And I was on the planning board in the mid-'90s. I just want to point out to everybody that we got Outer Cape Healthcare, we got Fontaine, because those were objectives that were decided that were not retail that the town wanted. We also got the Six Ponds District directly out of that plan. So that anybody thinks that we're just going to shelve this because we were sucking up 2 years of your time to put it in a bottom shelf somewhere, that's nuts. We're not going to be doing that, number one.
I think, and I appreciate, all the input you've had on the plan, and I think it could be said in the affirmative and the positive that the goal was to structure the plan so it is useful.
Yes, the best of intentions, really.
That's probably a better way of saying it instead of saying the negative.
Yeah, no, but there is that dialogue out there that, well, they're not going to follow this, but they are. What you really need to worry about, and you guys have done a wonderful job of addressing that, is inadvertently putting something there that you don't want to have happen. Dennis almost got themselves a Lowe's home center because their comprehensive plan said, let's build a whole lot of stuff up in our industrial park.
Right.
And the county, when it came time for the commission to be involved, quoted from their plan that you guys want this. I don't think that that's going on here. You guys have spent an awful lot of time trying to balance the environment with growth to come up with a town that you really want to live in.
Right.
So.
And I think that's why the values matter. That's why I spent some time kind of perseverating on that, is the values really matter, but then the actions really matter too, because they're related.
I just wanted to assure everybody that no one is going to ignore this, because there was a lot of work that went into it. So with that, board members.
Well, I'll start if no one else.
You've
wants to
dazzled
start.
them.
It was the kids at the end, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for all the time.
It's our pleasure.
Just for the benefit of the taxpayers and residents, between how many hours did the volunteers put in and how much the consultant cost? I just want people to hear how much went into this, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, sure. I mean, I carry around the number off the top of my head, $250,000 for the consultant, sort of.
240,000.
There you go. And then we've been at it for
the consultant, for
Yes.
the local comprehensive plan, as well as the housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan.
And then the hours and the leadership on behalf of the committee, I mean, these guys, we've been at it more than 3 years.
Yeah.
Just every month, multiple times a month. But
It was very much a team.
I cannot say more about, they're just remarkable committee, and with a wide and deep commitment to Harwich, but also willingness to bring their own expertise and professional expertise to the committee. It's really the best the town had to offer. So.
$250,000 and probably thousands of hours.
Yeah.
Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes.
When I read the plan, second time around, first one I forgot about, I have to admit,
okay.
because it's a lot of material. What I did read, because my question is about implementation, and what I picked up was the town administrator is kind of the quarterback, because, as you can see, we've got a lot incoming. And I hope, with all the money and time spent, stay on us, inform the town administrator, because I did hear the previous comprehensive plan wasn't followed. And it may have been left on the shelf, and that may be right or wrong, I don't really know.
Right.
And I don't want to even go back there, but this was a real big effort, and it's just as important that we keep it in the forefront, and that could be the new town administrator. You guys have done your time. Jeff has done a good job following, and he can probably keep us on track, but, let us know, because this is too big an effort to let go by.
Yeah, it's not, it's, I think, a useful reference, guidance. You use the term, planning documents are guidance in the sense of, this was the very best effort for a period in time, and I think that's important. As the world continue to change, of course, but this is the A-plus effort of strategic planning on behalf of Harwich at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, a ton of information, a ton of work put forward by your entire committee, by town staff, and so we are grateful for that. When I look at it, I pretty much see it as a breathing document, right? As you alluded to, it's a snapshot in time. It's what we felt was best interest of Harwich at that moment. And in 2 or 3 years, it may look a little bit different. I don't see anything that's going to be drastically different. And a lot of that has to do with the way in which you worded it, right? It's a recommendation or a thought or consideration, which I think is important. And when it comes to, executing the document, some of the 4x4s, I'll call them, pretty easy things to swing and hit, right? And we have professional town staff in place, and I think Mark just alluded to, the town administrator is going to be the individual that's responsible to delegate these responsibilities to his department heads and various people within town. And then it's up to us, who appoint various committee members throughout the community to hold them accountable, that they're adhering to this document as well. So I don't think this is something that's just going to get shelved. I don't think it's going to be ignored. But I do think as time goes on, we'll see it somewhat, take a different shape or different approach. And what I find interesting, and to the chair's point, I don't want to get into the negatives, but clearly we've already seen amongst the group that's been assembled some disagreement on the documentation, and that's going to continue to happen, right? And so then it just comes down to what's the will of the majority, and which direction do we go? So
The interesting nuance in that is, I think what doesn't change are the values. The what is Harwich? What when you look at the values of us, say this in a grammatically correct way. Our values as a community are timeless. The how best to execute on those, or to create town government that is proactive and protective of those values. That's where the interpretation comes in, and that's where some of the debate in the committee about, well, does this or that, whatever. We're agreeing on the values, and that's where I think some of the vision statement and the growth policy is important, but there is, and timeless, but there is. It's the nitty-gritty of town government to then what are the actions around that.
Yep, agreed. So again, I think it's a document that's well-crafted. We appreciate it, and I think it's something that we can be proud to put forward to the rest of the community.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to you both. Thank you to the entire committee. I really didn't have a lot to say, because I think I've said it all along.
You've been in it, Jeff. Yeah.
And to Mark's point about how often you all work and punch the clock, when I was vice chair for, I think, less than a year of this committee, one of the things when I left the committee to sit on this select board that I wish I did was get my name off the email list. Because
I love the emails.
I'm going to tell everybody, these folks worked tirelessly. The emails that I would get were never ending. They were respectful, they were driven, they were mission. It was really something else for me to just stay on point with you all by way of those emails. So unfortunately, I do have some things to say.
Sure.
Not just thank you, and I support it. You can't plan for success for your future with what you know today. You have to go and ask the people, which you did. The community outreach was fantastic. So that gives me great confidence in this document, which I considered this is not a stapled document. This is a living document, it's not a stapled document. But, when I read this again, and I know the public's read this multiple times, so I'm just gonna, you touch on community goals, objectives, and actions. And we're in the midst of actually using this plan and the housing production plan to measure up against certain developments that are occurring in our town right now. And I think that's a large part of why we do something like this, is to take a look at it and have things that are going on questioned. Do they measure up to what our community has asked for? So I look at water resources, I find the words protect, preserve, or restore. I scroll down to ocean resources, protect, preserve, and restore. Wetland, protect, preserve, restore. Wildlife and plant habitat, protect, preserve, restore. open space, conserve, preserve, and I think we all get the theme here. This is serious language born from a lot of work by our community and our volunteers. In my opinion, this document needs to be leaned on heavily with just about every decision this town makes that will determine our future, not tomorrow, not next month, not next year, but in 5 and 10 years. And it does sadden me a little bit to watch the work that we all put in here for 3 years. I don't know if any of you thought you were signing up for 3 years.
Garrett had 3 kids in this process.
I mean, we can measure
There are
this by
3
how
new
many children
citizens of
one
Harwich.
member
Yes,
had.
3 new young people in Harwich.
You know,
yes.
it is a little disheartening to watch the work, read this document, and then watch something just get plopped in, almost with wild disregard of what our community is looking for. So I look at this as something that each and every committee, town administrator, select board, planning board, we can all look at and use and refer to, and it should be on a desk at every meeting in case we need to refer to it.
Or up on the laptop. Yeah, and it's
Wherever.
hopefully supportive. You know, it's not heavy-handed, right?
It isn't.
It
But
should be supportive of the great work that the committees and the
But
volunteers
it's
are doing.
clear, and it keeps our 7 villages in balance with each other, which I think is a remarkable thing that you've brought in this really 2 kind of dimensional thing I'm reading here. You've captured 7 villages and how they all need to interact with each other and remain in balance. So I thank you all for the work you did, and I was proud to be part of that committee, and I'm proud to see it presented to our town, and I look forward to supporting this on town meeting floor. Thank you.
Anita?
I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done, and you were mentioning about having, the first time I was given this plan, I brought it home, I put it in a 3-ring binder, and it's got its own face on it, so I've got it at home on my desk. Thank you.
I'm just going to close out with something that I often talk about in the family, and I'm going to get to the point in a second, but the right note at the wrong time is the wrong note. So when you're doing things, the context of the time frame that you're doing them matters an awful lot. And we're at a point in Harwich's history right now, which is pretty exciting. We're looking for a new town administrator. You had the chair of the planning board start to talk about perhaps in conjunction with this discussion, looking at form-based zoning, because it's been getting away from the citizenry about what's getting built near them, and they're not real happy that they don't seem to have any leverage. I think that this is all like a moment in time, that everything is coming together. They may appear disparate, they may have appeared separate and distinct from each other a couple of years ago, but they're all part of the same trajectory, and I think it's an exciting time to live here, that we're considering all these things.
It is, you know, when you think of how our people, our youth, our older folks, our citizens interact, right? When I think of, you know, what's going on in the 204, how creatively that building is, you know.
You mean the cultural center?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, how often, I mean, just on a very great, how often that gym is used, you know, I mean, that is the kind of innovation and, you know, creativity and kismet that the town is really makes Harwich Harwich. And so I agree with you in that sense. None of it is easy, and it's not, sometimes it's messy, but you know, the result is really good.
Change can always look that way when you're in it, but when you look back, it actually has an order of its own.
It is. And so hopefully this document really supports this dynamicism.
And again, on behalf of everybody sitting up here, thank you for all the efforts, and thank you out there for everything that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's all about the committee.
It has been. This has been a wonderful team effort, and I have to say, in my 2 years of working for the town, it's been a great learning experience for me to learn, but also to really appreciate and identify all of what Harwich has to offer in terms of its assets, its working waterfront, its active harbors, our tourism and visitor-based economy, but also some of our year-round economic development opportunities, and as well as creating affordable housing. but also recognizing how much open space we have. Not many communities get to have that all in one package, and it's been a tremendous process, and I really do have to thank the committee chair as well as the committee members and members of the town boards and committees and the residents who really came out and participated actively, not only in the residence, but also coming out to our meetings. So this has been a really wonderful process. So thank you.
Okay. You're free to go.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Do you want me to read B?
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to authorize the chair to sign Chapter 40B technical review application for the Penrose Comprehensive Permit application for 465 Queen Anne Road.
Second.
And to be clear, that's to get technical assistance, so everybody knows that's the purpose of this. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right. Tony, would you like to carry on, start the discussion about agenda tracking?
Yeah, just briefly, I know, a lot of times we have packed agendas. I just wanted to, give everybody on the board and the public a little bit of insight into the work that we do on a weekly basis between our office and the chair of the board, and making sure we're adequately listening and tracking and adding agenda items and topics that are interest to the whole board or individual board members for future agendas. A lot of it has to do with trying to sequence a lot of these in based on timeliness of decisions or other things, and at the same time trying to ensure that we have meetings. I always say no good decisions happen past 10 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to share with everybody some of the things that are slated for upcoming agendas, and then all the ones that we're looking to get slated in appropriate time frames. And so if there are items that are of interest to you that I haven't captured or need to be captured, please let me know. As you see, I cross them off as we complete them, and I think the one you have in your packet, I think I've added a half a dozen, topics to that list already, because I update it on a weekly basis over the course of the weekend. So, happy to sit down with anybody at any time and, discuss any of the items on here, and trying to figure out between yourselves and the chair where we can, slot these topics in to make sure we, get all the important things heard by the board at the appropriate times, during the year. So, looking for any feedback on how we do this, or how we can do it better. Again, just to make sure that we're keeping visibility on topics. So sometimes we'll talk about some and it still stays on the list because we need to come back to it. The regional school district agreement, talking about, noise issues in Harwich Board and other places in town, as well as other things that stay on the list because we need to bring them back after, a period of time to have further discussions and make sure we're making progress on all these important issues that are before us.
And I think if I were going to add something, because the experience that you and I have had over the last almost 6 months now, there is no edit process where someone vetoes this stuff and it just gets pushed aside. You're tracking everything. Some of it has a lot to do with our capabilities of providing data to have an intelligent discussion. We just got the finance director hired, and she's doing a terrific job, but she was the missing link in an awful lot of the discussions about, financing things. So it may be that it's taking longer than some people want, but there isn't any prospect that we're sitting in an office saying, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. I will admit that in past years, not so much recently, but maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, that kind of stuff was happening. But it isn't happening now, and this matrix is on your desk all the time.
Yeah, and if the board is interested in seeing the list on a, I'm happy to send it out every week if you want, just for, again, for visibility. But no, myself and Natasha and Jen, we're trying to keep our ear to the ground, and if we hear something coming up that's of interest to any of the board members, we add it to the list and try to keep working our way
And that
through
includes
it.
notes from the day before. I mean, when we have the agenda meeting tomorrow, if anything came up tonight that's not on this list, it'll be added. So, anybody want to delve deeper into this?
No, what I'll say is, this is helpful, and I don't think we need it weekly. That's just my opinion. Other board members can opine, but, perhaps monthly, because when I'm looking at it, I think to myself, we sit here every Monday, or pretty much every Monday, and towards the end of the meeting, we throw out a couple bombs and ask to be added to the list, and you lose track of all the other things that you've already asked to be on the list. So this is helpful, and again, monthly would be great in my estimation, but I'm happy to hear what the others say.
Anita?
No, I think it's fine.
Mark?
No, it's a great tracking advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's not just a device, but I'll go to Jeff, but it definitely is about making sure something doesn't fall through the cracks as we move forward. Jeff?
No, and thank you, and I think monthly for me would work perfectly. So the next town administrator, because you're going to get to send it out once now, I think.
Maybe not.
We're still going to receive that.
Maybe not even.
Might be twice.
29 days.
Yeah, maybe twice. I think for me, there's, and I don't want to go deep into this really tonight, and I can sit down and have a conversation with you. I've got my list that I track. It marries up perfectly to this. So I see Walder Road stairs. I think we talked about that, and I think that should be one that's crossed off, because there is no movement forward. The deposit's going to go back to that gentleman, and that probably just hasn't gotten crossed off yet for whatever reason, right? Discussion on the entertainment policy. The last conversation that we had here was, in my mind, an urgent conversation, because the year was ending. We needed to get this under control, moving forward into the next year's entertainment licenses. And I believe there's a lot of outstanding, at least in my mind, a lot of outstanding things that we discussed at that meeting maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, that I was thinking we were going to see it every week until we got a resolution on that, so that we could move into 2026, understanding how the town was going to look from an entertainment standpoint. And that's on me. I should probably just reach out and ask you where things stand with that. My last question would be, how do you want, or how does the chair, I know when I was chair, I'd reach out weekly and say to the board members, hey, we'll do an agenda prep tomorrow, anything that's on your mind or anything that you want to get on that agenda. Arguably not the most streamlined way to do it, but at least I felt I was giving the board members the opportunity to say, oh yeah, what about this, right? How do you want it done?
Well, I mean, it's your guys' agenda, right?
Well, I
So
understand
I'm sort of trying to manage everything. I mean, again, I think for some of the items, for instance, like the entertainment policy, what I would look for is, specific things that are needed before the next discussion. A lot of times what happens is, if we discuss it on Monday, the chances of trying to collect all that for the next Monday in the midst of everything else can be really difficult to do. So I can tell you right now, we're spending, all engines are running on full steam to get the operating budget. Again, given I've been here less than 100 days, Jen's been on the job for probably less than 25 days. So, I mean, it's a massive effort to do that. So anything that's going to take a lot of time can be difficult to do in 4 days before the next meeting and make it worthwhile for the board and make it of value. So I think is trying to look at the next meeting as coming to an agreement about what is a sufficient amount of time for us and other staff, or whatever data we need to collect, to be able to have something for the board to digest and hopefully to reach, a decision on. And again, the entertainment one's a very weighty one for sure. But we are running up against a timeline that, it'll be summer and May, before we know it, and a lot of the outside entertainment particularly in Harwichport, will be getting ready to gin up, and so how do we make sure we are providing the right guidance through those entertainment licenses that'll be coming up in the spring. I don't know if it's April or March. We're almost there, so that's going to be a tough one to crack, but we got to figure out a path ahead. So maybe we can talk about that and figure out what it is that we want to, collect to be able to present something worthwhile for the board to consider. Policies like that take policy development. It's weighty. It's not a one meeting or even a two meeting thing to develop a policy and make sure you've not left too many holes in there. It's clear to the board from an enforcement standpoint. It's clear to the business owner from the standpoint they know the rule set and the boundaries with which they're expected to operate and perform, and provides clarity to the residents and others in those areas about what they can expect and have an opportunity to weigh in on. So that's kind of how I look at that. But
And I respect the compression that administration's under at this time of year. I understand the competing needs you all have in there. But the runway for that one is getting
coming
short.
up. It is.
So, okay, I'm really happy about this. This makes me feel a lot better. And I can reach out when I have questions.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
one of the options, you'll see what I put on that, put by village with a question mark, like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe it's you have to slice the sausage in a number of slices, and you go, we need to focus on Harwichport first. Or maybe it's town-wide, I don't know, but, we have 7 villages, probably some of them don't have any outside entertainment, 'cause there's no businesses there that do it. So where do we want to focus initially? Where is the highest pinch point that we often hear about or get feedback on? I think Harwichport is an easy one to say, maybe we need to focus on that particular zone just because of the uniqueness of it, the proximity and its mixed-use environment, and, that kind of thing. So that's where I look for guidance so that we can go back and do our end of it for the board, know exactly what the expectation is for you all to then, make some decisions, because you own policy, so.
Excellent. Thank you.
So along those same along the same lines, and I don't want to really dig too deep into it either, but Tony had just touched on it. And specifically on the entertainment policy, we need a larger conversation as a group on direction and thoughts before we charge the town administrator with bringing something forward. And these are the types of conversations, that truly, as Tony said, that these are policy-driven conversations that, we probably need to start looking at how do we conduct some workshops so that we can have 1, 2, or 3 items that are policy-related on the agenda, and that's what we discussed that evening, and try to not solve, but come up with some form of a direction that then we can task administration with collecting data or putting a plan together, and then we see if we, in a few weeks' time after that, how and if we execute on that. So that's probably more where we need to look, and I don't know that we're going to have a lot of bandwidth in the next couple months, but perhaps, we do try to, specific to entertainment, have some type of workshop as a group that we can at least set the direction.
Well, one more thing, if I could just
Sure.
share now, because Pete added. So now, the school committee vacancy. That is a Harwich representative on the school committee with a vote. To me, that is a very important agenda item for us to have back on to discuss. And it was in my notes to ask at the end tonight. Have we reached out to the two people who were running for school committee? How do we get this seat filled, essentially?
Okay, so.
You don't have to answer that tonight.
Well, I have the answer.
Well, he is going to answer.
Okay, all right, cool, great. Thank
There's
you.
always a lot going on behind the scenes. So, so we have generated the ad. We've coordinated with the chair of the school committee, who's also a Harwich resident. That is going to be in the paper on Thursday for 2 weeks. And we have that scheduled for the 2nd of February for a joint meeting with the school committee and the select board to select the candidate. As it relates to reaching out to 2 candidates, I wasn't sure that was the town administrator, weighing in on that, but certainly, you know, anybody can reach out to those two candidates. It'll be active now. There's, Mark, I hope you don't mind, we asked them to send letters of interest and resumes to you as the clerk of the board, which is what we've done before. And then that obviously will be available for the board to have an interview with, if there's more than one candidate, on the 2nd of February, and then vote that evening. And the Harwich representatives on the school committee have all said they're available on the 2nd. So that's the night we've chosen to have that joint meeting.
And that was by agreement with Meredith. I've had several conversations with
So,
her.
yeah, that made up what's on the list, but we're doing the pre-work ahead of the meeting. As you saw, I started plugging in dates.
Yeah, no, 26th.
What's that?
You know, the school committee went on the 26th.
Yeah, but then I looked at what the 2 week, we can't get it in the paper till Thursday, so we wanted to make sure it was open for at least 2 weeks. So, so you'll see that on there, that I'm tracking that for the meeting. Originally, it was set for the 22nd, but we've moved it to the 2nd just because of the newspaper timeframes to do a 2-week advertisement for a prospective interested party, so.
And just to close out the discussion, it's not necessarily what it appears to be in terms of this isn't happening or that isn't happening. We've just gone through an extraordinary period of time. We have an acting town administrator. We lost our assistant town administrator. We just hired a finance director. We just got a comprehensive plan reported into us. There's been an awful lot of stuff going on, and I've been trying to make the point week in and week out that we're ahead of schedule nonetheless with the budget and the warrant. We're further along than we have been. Not everything enjoys the same priority as everything else, and right now, stabilizing management, getting the town meeting put together, and getting the warrants done were the highest possible priority. It's just unusually cluttered over the last 6 months because these extraordinary events don't happen all the time. I can assure everybody that Tony and I talk about whether something's mature or not, and that it's on the list, and he keeps wanting to move it on to an agenda, which is a good thing. And hopefully, if we get the bandwidth, we will do that. But I think Pete's onto something too. This is a complex discussion, and we're going to have to define what the problem is that we're trying to solve, because every establishment that does the entertainment is not equal to every other establishment. It really depends on where they're located and what disturbance they might be creating. And that has to be taken into account with the changes that have been made of the liquor licensing, especially since COVID. If we start granting things without this discussion being had, we're going to wind up having a real problem pulling them back and redefining them, because they are associated with individual liquor licenses at that point. So it definitely needs the work leading into whatever that policy is going to be, because that's what's going to wind up being our defense against people thinking that there's a capricious and arbitrary decision about you can, but you can't. We're going to have to define where that is, and off the top of my head, I think the highest priority is going to wind up having to be Harwich Port, because the way the zoning was constructed, it's only 150 feet deep. I mean, you get behind the parking lot and you're in a residential area now. And people, it's great that we're becoming vibrant as a community, but it has to be done in a manner where the people who were there all along feel like they're welcome too. So that discussion is going to happen as we go along, because it has to happen. And I'm very appreciative of everything Tony's done, because all these agendas are very collaborative. Anybody who says anything, Jen takes down, Tony takes down, I take down, at every agenda meeting, it's added to the bucket until we can get to the point where it's completed, and as Tony said, he gets satisfaction out of crossing it off the list. But this is the mechanism, and I thought it was worthwhile for you guys to see it.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the following 2026 auto class license renewals. Goodson's Motor Cars, 210 Queen Anne Road, Unit 12, Auto Class 2.
Second.
Okay, it's moving second to approve Goodson's Motor Cars class license. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chair, I move we vote to approve a special permit application for Ed McManus, Lower Cape Kiwanis Club, for a one-day road race permit for an event to be held on April 26, 2026, from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the bike trail crossing at Depot Street.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the request for the Kiwanis Club, and Ed's going to feel this is an anticlimax if we just vote, but unless you got something you really want to add to this. And you know you can't be heard there. You're only delaying the approval, but that's okay.
No, it's just, it's not the Ed McManus run. It's just, I put my name, wound up
Yeah,
putting
the
my
foot race
name on.
between you and I, that wouldn't be something
It's
anybody would
it's a
watch.
project, it's a cooperative project between Lower Cape Kiwanis Club, which has members from here to East Hampton, and the two key clubs. We sponsor a key club at Monomoy Regional High School and at Nauset Regional High School, and it's a joint fundraiser for them. On the Kiwanis Club's side of it, it'll be a fundraiser to help build up our scholarship funds. We award scholarships every year. The individual key clubs will have their own charity that they'll decide on. I think one of the contenders is up at Dream Day Camp, and I'm not sure you know, that's the camp, summer camp up the other side of Nickerson Park, where families with disabled and very ill children get a week's respite. It's been a long project of Kiwanis. I think of the 8 cabins up there, Kiwanis, the different Kiwanis clubs on the Cape have built 4 of them over time. And they're currently under a fundraising effort to come up with money to build a new playground. The playground equipment is all old wooden equipment and actually not very handicapped accessible, and that needs to be replaced, but that's it. And it's actually, it's not a road race, it's going to be a trail run. The route of it will be to circle the West Reservoir. It'll start on the bike trail at Depot Street, go to trail, come up back onto the bike trail to cross the Herring River, and then back onto trail down Bell's Neck Road, and then the trail on the south side of the reservoir over the Herring Run, and then up through the bogs back to the finish line of the bike trail. And because we're staging this in late April, and it's crossing the Herring Run, the name of it will be the Harwich Herring Run. So, anyway, that's just a brief. Because it's being sponsored by Kiwanis Club, we have our application in to receive insurance from Kiwanis International. One of the benefits of being a Kiwanis Club, they'll provide insurance for any event that we have. And we've had conversations with the police department, fire department, and our natural resources director about any interaction with the Herring Run. So I think we're well on our way. We went in front of the Conservation Commission, and they gave us approval because this is primarily on conservation land. I've also met with Mike Locke because we do get onto the Harwich Conservation Trust land too. Anything else?
You want us to vote?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your time is up.
Good.
Sorry. All right.
Never miss a chance to get a little advertising.
I know, Ed. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve a temporary closure for Harwichport House of Pizza, 330 Route 28, closing December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I just want to note and thank Jen and the staff. So the notification was received on December 29th for December 31st closure. The disclosure did not state when the business would reopen. So Jen had reached out to clarify, and I appreciate that she also instructed them to submit their request in a more timely fashion in the future. So I think it's something we want to keep notated for future requests.
Okay. So,
Vote?
yeah, we didn't vote.
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. We're not going to do a review of the harbor fees again. So, moving on. Discussion of the Witchmere Beach Club request. I do want to start off with saying, relative to this, just to put this in a context, when Jeff left the chair and came, and I segued in, he handed off discussions that he had already had with Witchmere Harbor, and I extended an open-ended invitation to appear at any meeting, anytime a presentation wanted to be made. So if it appeared that this is like jammed up against what we need for a letter of support, understand that that started basically in the beginning of August, that the invitation went out, and there were numerous phone calls where we followed up to say, you're ready to come in. So I just want the public to understand that this is not some ad hoc thing where we're racing against the clock. That being said, Jeff, you want to talk to a possible vote to support?
Well, we heard from, Michael was in the audience here tonight, from Witchmere a couple of weeks ago, and at the end of his presentation to the board, I believe, Pete, you were the chair that night? Were you the chair that night? The request was made for the Witchmere Beach Club to obtain either a letter of support or the support from the Select Board. I thought that's reasonable. I know we've done that before with others, and it's here back tonight before us, so thank you, Mr. Chair, for putting it on the agenda. You know, I don't know where to go from here, not being the chair. I'm not going to call for a vote of support, but I'd like to hear what the rest of the board members have to say, and we have Michael to answer questions if any other questions needed to be answered.
Well, there is one at least that we have right now. I don't think we got to a point of resolution about the sidewalk, and that just came up.
That was new as another possible, mitigation step, so I don't know if you want to invite to explain, but...
The other thing is, I'm not sure what kind of letter, in all deference, I mean, I personally would like to see something happen there that's appropriate for the community, but not necessarily something that's super big, but without knowing the magnitude of the project, that's kind of difficult to roll into a letter of support other than to support the concept of the actual building, because we don't know what, and we're not set up to be a regulatory board, so we don't know what the actual ask is going to be at the commission level.
Let me start by saying I made a mistake. We have Stephen here, not Michael.
Yeah.
Confused the
Sorry,
hell out of
Stephen.
me.
Appreciate it. Sorry for
He doesn't
that.
look like he sounds.
Yeah. I've seen the project. They presented the size of the project. They presented how they are going to reduce the footprint of the project. You know, I know where I stand with the project. It's now before the board. If the board would like to vote a word of support to the project or not, that is that is up to the board.
What do you guys want to do? I mean, it's on for as much or as little as you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to vote, I think the public should have an opportunity to talk about this.
Right.
Okay? So I have some notes. I can't believe you're going to do this and jam this down our throat this quickly.
Bob, that is not what's
Appreciate
happening.
the
Excuse me, but that is not what's happening. You're up here, we asked you if you wanted to say something, and you are. And I
No, you
asked
were
whether,
just about to go and
what the
vote.
board wanted to do. Don't presuppose that we're going to do something necessarily that we haven't stated we're going to do.
Okay.
I find it a little
Thank
bit
you.
offensive.
Thank you, I apologize. I appreciate the opportunity to speak from a resident's point of view on the proposed expansion. The affected residents and neighbors have retained Senior and Associates law firm to represent us. There are 112 residents working with them. It's obviously not a joking matter to us that are impacted by this project. I listened to the December 15th Select Board meeting twice, and I take issue with a number of the comments that were presented. However, tonight I will address just 3 areas that are the most disturbing: traffic, safety, and impact to Snow Inn residents. While Wychmere has been willing to meet with neighbors about traffic management, we have yet to see how an increased operation of 72 rooms will not increase traffic on Snow Inn Road. This is a huge project, and it's not at all clear how it will be managed and mitigated. It is undeniably positive that smaller trucks and vans will be used to transport merchandise and wedding guests, but that does not equate to the use of Snow Inn Road or less traffic. It is undeniable that this proposal is intensifying in use. Safety for pedestrians is huge. Myrtle Beach is at the end of SRI, Snow Inn Road, and the town promotes this beach. All summer long, walkers, strollers, bicycles, beach wagons are going down and back to the beach. How is the town looking at this issue with additional traffic that be generated? The existing pavement on Snow Inn Road ranges from 16 to 23 foot on blacktop. I measured all those. There's no room for cars or trucks to give a 4 foot of way to pedestrians on the heavy use. The intersection of 28 and Snow Inn Road and Freeman Street has been identified as a Mass DOT top 5% intersection crash cluster, and this project will make it worse. That report was in February 2025, and it's a VHB report. It was your traffic engineer. This project affects Snow Inn residents, the Davis Lane residents, and Freeman Street residents. Now the applicant is apparently requesting a survey Snow Inn Road to determine if it would possibly put in a sidewalk to Route 28 to Myrtle Beach. This would involve a taking of all along Snow Inn Road and is not a trivial matter. This alone requires significant work and process part of the town and emphasizes that now is not the time for the Select Board to weigh in on this. On top of that, it's just a bad idea to stick residents to the benefits, stick it to the residents to benefit this private development if they lose their land. There is also a town process here that may end up involving other boards, committees of the town to review the land issues and involved with this project. This is a complex matter that deserves this attention, and it is entirely improper for the Select Board to come out ahead of that process. The impacted residents and neighborhoods who are also supposed to be represented have been fighting for this project for over a year. We sent letters, emails, attended 4 Zoom meetings with the CCC subcommittee before the initial application was withdrawn in the spring. This led to a reduction to 72 rooms, 8 less than they asked for originally. We have had meetings with Wychmere. We agreed on some things, the need for traffic calming on Snow Inn Road, but not about the massive size of this proposal. We are hopeful CCC does not approve this application, but if it does, the next stop is the town of Harwich, where there are processes in place to consider the merits of such a project. We do not believe that you or us or anyone else have enough details on this project, certainly enough to issue a vote of support for it. And that's why at this time we request you do not do this. That presentation was 18 minutes by them, and the total time was 35 minutes. And 35 minutes, don't tell me you know the details of this project. Thank you.
We got, before we get to you, Matt, we got a couple of people online. Jack Herndon?
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. For the record, Jack Herndon with Senni & Associates in Brewster. We represent Bob and several of the abutters on Snow Inn Road, Main Street, Davis Lane, Freeman Street, just to name a few. So just kind of going off what Bob mentioned, you know, I really think that a vote of support at this time puts you and the town in general in an uncomfortable position moving forward, because as one of the board members pointed out, we don't really know what you're agreeing to at this point and what the impact of that will be. There is a Cape Cod Commission subcommittee hearing coming up, and it'll be pointed out to the committee that if you vote to support this project, that you and the town in general are in full support of it. And I think that's kind of a dangerous thing that you really have to think out. There is a traffic report that our expert has reviewed at this time, showing that there is an increase in traffic, and that the Witchmere has proposed some mitigation efforts, but these efforts are really unclear and don't really nail down what it is they're doing to mitigate the issue, other than, we're going to, decrease the number of trips with smaller cars and things like that. And overall, the mitigation of the project, as it's been proposed in general, really doesn't have any benefit to the surrounding community. With the talk of having a sidewalk, that involves a taking. The taking impacts the community members and their property values in a way that, we really don't know what the impact of that is yet. And so I urge you to really think about that as you're voting tonight. In the past 15 years, the town, between the ZBA, Planning Board, and Conservation Commission, has also consistently conditioned that for this site specifically, that there should be no change in capacity or intensity of use. This is in the conditions of whether it be special permits or for NOIs before the Conservation Commission. All that we're really getting is a promise from the Witchmere that there isn't going to be an impact on the community. And they say that, it will benefit us, but we're not really sure how. So for those reasons, we ask that you really consider this and you do not issue a vote of support at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say, because this is the second time this has come up, that it's unclear to me, and I'm not sure that it's not going to be unclear to a lot of the regulatory people in the town about whether there's a taking involved with this. I'm not even sure what the road layout is that would allow for this. A lot of people have properties that they have grass growing right up until the paved portion of the roadway, but they don't own that necessarily. And I don't know that we've ever done a deep dive in that, and we're not going to be the ones who do that. It's going to wind up going through a regulatory process, which we are not. So I just wanted to set the record straight that it's unclear about whether there's any kind of taking involved with either the sidewalk or widening the road. That part of the discussion hasn't happened yet. Yes, Steve? And Mr. Clark, we'll get to you in a couple seconds.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I did come in front of you. You were absent from the meeting. I did discuss the benefits of the project. I came before you all on the 15th of December in advance of the meeting with the Commission on the 16th. We do have a staff report from the Cape Cod Commission indicating that we have met technical compliance for all of the standards, right? We've heard your colleague today speak about all of those different areas, and we have technical compliance on all of those things. We heard from members of the community last week on the 16th about safety concerns on Snow Inn Road. We heard in multiple instances, and we heard and we've read from the letters that there is a safety issue on Snow Inn Road, because the perception is that it is a pedestrian road. We know that it is not a pedestrian road. There is complaints about landscaping trucks double parked on the road. That is, I'm standing in front of you trying to explain, right? I can't explain it. Snow Inn Road, there's supposed to be no parking permitted on the road. Ty and Bond, who is our engineer of record, have indicated they refute what Bob has said. They have said that, yes, a sidewalk is achievable and would like to be able to further study that, and Witchmere is offering it as a mitigation effort to fund such a test. And we would like to be able to do that because several people have landscaped into the public way itself. So in the interest of safety, Wychmere is here standing, looking to work with the community on the perceived notion of a safety issue on Snow Inn Road. Further, I want to address directly Bob. I met with Bob last week following the meeting. I outlined deliveries in particular. I'm able to articulate the amount of deliveries that are going to come off of Snow Inn Road and will be redirected to our commissary building. Thousands of trips, right, over a period of time. For any of you who are available, I encourage you all to watch the meeting with the Commissioner on the 7th, where you can actually see where we will break it down with intelligence from an employee perspective, from a guest perspective, and from a vendor perspective. This is all based off of real life data, right? We monitored the entire season this year in order to be able to make sound and solid assumptions to be able to present to you all today. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. The conversation that I had with Mr. Schiavi last week was to ask the town if it was permissible for Wychmere to move forward to be able to offer the town to conduct a site survey at our expense, right, to be able to show the neighbors what is possible on Snow Inn Road, a public way. Thank you.
Okay. There's actually two things going on here that I just want to be very clear about. There was no fix in any way. This was requested to be put on the agenda. There is no other way to have a public discussion about anything in this body other than having it on an agenda, so it's on the agenda. And we're having a discussion relative to that. We are not going to be building this. We are not going to be parsing the project's particulars either, because we're not a regulatory board. Whatever the board decides that they want to do is fine with me, but that's why it's here, is to have an open discussion in front of the public about the request that's in front of us, which is for a letter of support. So with that,
Support and approval for the sidewalk. And thank you.
it's going to be a stretch to approve anything other than a letter of support, but Mr. Clark has been patiently waiting.
Hello, thanks very much for holding this hearing and for allowing me time to speak. Very few of, I'm sure very few people live near or around Snow Inn Road. I live on Davis Lane. And I think you're aware that there was the approval in the building of the Dune building, which is a party building, a wedding party building mainly. And that has precipitated a huge increase in traffic already. I live on Davis Lane, and I have grandchildren and so on who come in. A year ago, I had to put up speed bumps on our dirt road to stop the people and the trucks and the suppliers and the deliveries and so on from cutting through and going in excessive speeds. Snow Inn Road, which I go down often, is also very busy. You're not going to get those landscape trucks off of Snow Inn Road because all they do is block the driveway of the proprietors who are hiring them. So I think I would urge you to table this discussion so that you can better understand what the implications are, especially from several of the homeowners along Snow Inn Road who have, at least one of them has about a 100-foot wall that was built over 100 years ago. A sidewalk would require the tearing off of that wall. That's a pretty big invasion of people's privacy. So I would think that the planning board would want to have a lot more information, not just about what the implications are, but also what the size of the new proposal equals in terms of traffic. The traffic is going to be overwhelming anyway. It's already begun to be overwhelming. So whatever is approved is going to be quite quite a difficult pill to swallow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol, I can't see your last name clearly, but
Keenan.
if we unmute you, you can say it. I don't think your microphone is connected. While you're working that out, if there's anybody else who would like to say anything, if you could hold on, Matt, for a second.
My name is Lucy Steer, and I own property on Snow Inn Road. I just feel like the vote tonight to support the project is premature. I think when this body takes a vote, it carries a lot of weight, and I don't believe that all the facts are in yet. We still are going up in front of the Cape Cod Commission, as you all know, and there's a lot that hasn't come out. So that is why I feel like it is premature. I also feel, as do a lot of the people that I represent, that the Select Board represents all of us. And a vote now feels as though we're not being represented, whether the vote would be up or down. I just hope that the Select Board would remain neutral on this and let everything come out in our discussions with the Cape Cod Commission. I also agree with Mr. Nickerson that what you guys do in here carries a lot of weight. And if the project is sent to the town to be reviewed by the different committees, there's no doubt they're going to be swayed. They're human beings. I'd be swayed, if the Select Board voted up or down on this before all the committees had a chance to hear it. It's very possible I don't understand how all this works, but I'm just talking to you from my heart and my gut about how this just feels wrong right now. It feels too aggressive. It feels like an overreach, that they asked for something that really was very clever, it was very strategic, but it's inappropriate to hear from the Select Board. It just feels irresponsible if you guys were to take a vote. Thank you.
Matt.
Matt Sutphin, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Administrator Scavi. I've written to you in the past. I go a long way. I go long way back on Snow Inn Road. I used to walk down Snow Inn Road to get on the bus in the morning. My mother started working at the club in 1959. I've lived in 2 buildings close to one on Davis Lane, one house, and I've lived on Snow Inn Road in another house. I can assure you, I'm reasonably assured that you are going to find there is just not much wiggle room in Snow Inn Road. I've helped my father run waste pipes under one side of the road to the other for boathouses as a kid, and there's just not much room. You throw in a sidewalk, and you've still got the issues of people having to pass each other. You've still got the issues of people ignoring an expectation that they not park there to unload their lawnmowers or whatever. You've still got the same issues, is what I'm saying, and you've taken away 4 feet. So there's a lack of logic in my mind, given that there isn't much room there in the first place. Rarely do you hear somebody say, there's less traffic than there was last year. Such will be the case with the projections about the Snow and Road as to a specific amount of traffic that will happen and everything will be rosy. 10 years from now, there will not be that specific, that amount. There'll be that specific amount plus X. Instead of 2 weddings a day or 3 weddings a day, there may be 4 weddings a day. Who knows? Nobody really knows. So it's a big ask to have somebody stand before you and say, this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's going to stay. I've watched Snow Inn grow over my lifetime. The anticipated building envelope, I believe, is equal to the Stop and Shop in East Harwich. That's just an awful lot of building to put on a road that everybody's discussing whether or not it's wide enough. And it's the only way in. So nobody would start with a blank sheet of paper and say, oh, we're going to build 80,000 feet. We're not sure the road's going to be wide enough, and we're not going to bother with another exit. Nobody would do that. So I encourage you to be neutral, as everybody has asked. Let this play out, and don't appear to be endorsing a big box in town. There are plenty of other big boxes coming along as well, creating a lot of anxiety for a lot of us. We don't need cheerleaders for big boxes. Thank you.
Okay. Is Carol still online?
No, I think she left.
Yes, I'm here.
Aha.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go out and come
I'm going
in.
to ask you to try to focus on anything new, because I think the discussion heretofore has been, we don't know everything, so please don't take a stance. It could be summed up with that. So if you have something new or different, I'd appreciate hearing it.
So I do have some remarks that I'm just going to read, and you can decide whether they're this new or not. I think they are new. I'm a direct abutter to the Witchmere Harbor Club, and I respectfully ask you not to rush to judgment on this project. The Cape Cod Commission Subcommittee is meeting on Wednesday for the very purpose of getting more answers from the developers. Why rush to approve it before you get those answers? Last year, a subcommittee turned down a very similar version submitted by the same developer by a 4-to-1 vote after multiple public hearings, because this project is just too big, too massive, and it generated fervent opposition from scores of Harwichport residents, including those living on Snow Inn, Davis, Bayview, Bank, Woodland, Harbor, Freeman, Neal, Hoyt, Pleasant, and Route 28, among others. Anyone who walks or bikes down Snow Inn Road, especially in the summer, can attest that it's already dangerous. We've had drivers coming from weddings smash into a telephone pole across from our house late at night, into our mailbox, and into a traffic safety mirror our next door neighbor installed, ironically to protect her from ongoing traffic. No amount of traffic mitigation measures would have prevented any of that from happening. Now imagine how much more dangerous it will be if you add 40 hotel rooms. That's a 125% increase, and a restaurant and a bar to the behemoth that's already there. Snow Inn Road, which is, as Bob said, as narrow as 16 or 17 feet at points, is the only way to enter and exit from Witchmere. Ask yourself what happens if there's a health emergency and all the additional vehicles bring traffic to a standstill on Snow Inn and an ambulance can't get through. Or if there is a fire and at the new restaurant and bar and a fire engine can't get through. And keep in mind, and this is something I know you know, the intersection of Snow Inn and Freeman and Route 28 is already one of the most dangerous intersections in Harwood. That affects everyone in our neighborhood. So please don't do a deep dive into the pros and cons of this complex project, and please solicit the views of those who will be most affected before you rush to give your stamp of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eben?
Hi, how are you? Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the other residents of Snow Inn Road. We met actually back last year talking about this project, and obviously with the 200 plus, 250 plus wedding events that happen now on the street with the addition of Dune, It probably actually is a little bit more to 300, as we all know. By adding the additional rooms, no one's really talking about the actual restaurant itself. 98 restaurant in the venue, plus a 25-person spa. So again, with a restaurant that has 90 seats, plus indoor-outdoor seating, on a typical Saturday or Sunday, you're looking at, 2 seatings of brunch, 1 of lunch, then afternoon drinks and cocktails, then 2 seatings for dinner, then afternoon dinner and drinks. So just the activity from guests alone that are not actually staying at the hotel, that are visiting the restaurant and or the bar or cafe, obviously is going to create more traffic on the street. And for that, again, I think it's, again, for safety reasons only, and this is, now I understand why the strategy is to ask now for a even more room on Snowwood Road by asking the residents to actually give up some of their land for now a sidewalk, and that's kind of the strategy that the Winchmere folks are employing. Listen, I would do that too. It sounds like a sound strategy, but in the same regard, I mean, it's not just the addition of the 72 hotels, the additional 40 rooms as mentioned previously. It's the guests that will visit those guests that are actually staying there, the 90-seat restaurant that's actually going to be a bar and restaurant with indoor and outdoor seating that is going to have 5-6 seatings a day. I know myself, I'm a restaurateur myself, so I totally get it. You're trying to get other people different times of the day to visit the restaurant. That'll be happening as well, plus above and beyond the 3 or 4 seatings at the spa at the hotel as well. So, I want to make sure that we're not just talking specifically about an addition of 40 rooms and really a square footprint that is well over double the size of the current footprint, but it's really the addition of the restaurant down there. And so for that, we would ask the committee to delay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I just want to repeat myself again because I want to make sure everybody was hearing what I was saying. Tonight, the discussion is narrowly about whether we should or shouldn't send any letter of support. We are not in a position to address any of the shortcomings or benefits of this project. That is not what this is about. And when those concerns are brought up, they need to be brought up to the appropriate parties, not us. It's narrowly about whether you think we know enough to be able to make an informed decision or you don't. And I'd like everybody to stick to that because we're not going to get out of here unless everybody understands we're not building it tonight. You're on.
Thank you. Hi, Barbara Nickerson, Harwich Port. First, I'd like to start on a positive note and thank Joyce McIntyre and her leadership, Harwich is homegrown, Joyce, for the bang-up job that she did on the LCP. She's been tremendous for the last 3.5 years and stuff, and I think we have a great document that hopefully will be okay passing town meeting in May.
Our fearless secretary.
Yeah, 3.5 years of writing minutes.
Got to come to town meeting.
Back in 2023, the Winchmere folks submitted a notice of intent to the Historic Commission about building a boutique hotel with 40 rooms. They were going to knock down the old Snow Inn, and after several back and forths with the historic folks, they came up with the design that they were okay with, and we were going to have a 40-room boutique hotel down at the end of Snow Inn Road. They even talked to some of the abutters and told them that, come September, just want to let you know that we're going to be starting some construction on a hotel, blah, 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 blah. So, okay. Well, I'm a big historic person, as most of you probably know, and I didn't even go to the hearings to complain about it because I thought that, 32 to 40 rooms, I can understand you can't get a king-size bed in a 1870-year hotel or house, as I can tell you also. So you didn't have the neighbors complaining about the 8-room difference or the construction that's going to happen at that point. Then we got radio silence for a while, and to be honest, we just kind of all just ignored it and went around regular life and everything. And then, 15 months ago, whatever it was, they sent the notice of intent, I guess they sent it to the planning board, about a 80-room hotel and restaurant and spa and on and on. Totally caught the neighborhood off guard. And I thought that, for the most part, that Witchmere and the neighborhood had a pretty good relationship, since probably 2/3 of the people on Snow Inn are Witchmere Beach Club members. So I guess my point is that we feel a little bit betrayed that people didn't know that this was going to happen, that we were going to have a bait and switch, or is it switch and bait, whichever way it goes, to go from a 40-room hotel to an 80-room hotel. I also felt that there should be time and ability to negotiate. Ever since the beginning, we've told the Witchmere people, we've told the Cape Cod Commission, we are not against Witchmere rebuilding their hotel, but not as the project is proposed. We need something smaller. We need a 40 or 50-room hotel. 50-room hotel. We wouldn't be having these conversations right now if the hotel and everything associated with it was smaller. It's too large. So, you know that Bob and I were some of the ringleaders on this whole Sunday school project, and I personally feel that using a lot of the stuff that we have from the new comprehensive plan and talking with them, we got through something where we feel it's a win-win situation. Smaller structure, we have rental opportunities for local people. That's an absolute win-win for Harwichport and for Harwich as a whole. So please don't feel that we, the neighbors, are totally against what's being proposed. We are, as proposed. But we've told them all along, if you made it smaller, you probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think it's time for a little bit more negotiating prior to y'all making a vote to support the project as is proposed. Thank you, appreciate it.
This is not meant to be sarcastic or anything, but I'll take it that that would mean that you would prefer that we hold in abeyance any sort of support until we have further information.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I'm really looking for, because we can't address any of the problems. I'm not going to get into any back and forth.
Mr. Chair, all I was going to say that, I think that it would be prudent. First of all, Barbara, thank you for what you've said, right? That you're not opposed to certain things. I appreciate that. I think it better because there has been so many wild kind of inaccuracies brought up today. I don't have time to be able to address all of them. And I think that, when you read one letter to the next, you'll see the difference of opinion of all those who are in opposition. So rather than you all being influenced by what is being said differently by people, I came in front of you all thinking that we were just going to have a conversation. I could have brought several people here to speak in support.
But we wouldn't have allowed you to get into that discussion.
Understood, but this has occurred, right? So I'm defending the position, right? I could have brought 20 other people here because the support outweighs the opposition, but I chose not to do that, because this was a conversation, a request to discuss the possibility of a sidewalk. Witchmere is not saying that a sidewalk needs to be installed. I want to be very clear. We want to offer the mitigation effort to pursue the potential of a sidewalk so that those who are concerned at the pedestrian safety on a public way can be addressed. Thank you all very much. I'd like to withdraw the request.
Well, I was just going to recommend that you don't want us to go on record, because if we don't vote to support it, it'll be taken as a vote to not support it. You probably don't want an action at all.
I think that rather than, it would have been, I would have been better prepared for this conversation if I knew that 30 people were going to come and speak out. We could have brought some support.
To assuage you a little bit, it wouldn't have gotten that far, because we're not set up to be able to litigate this project in this meeting tonight.
I'd like to just remind the board that the commission have found the project technically compliant on all objectives.
And I urge everyone to go to the subcommittee hearing, because those are the people who need to hear what you're saying. And I'm sure that Mr. Cullen will be bringing the people from the proponent's side, too.
I will show everyone what I showed.
And that is the proper place to go. So unless somebody wants to make a motion, I think that we should leave it as we've had the discussion. You know, it's pretty clear that there's a disagreement amongst some people. And again, I don't want to have a motion that says I support it and it goes down in flames because it's going to look like we voted against it. We're not taking any position unless somebody makes a motion and we have to vote on it. I was trying to make that clear up front before everybody got concerned about it. It's on the agenda to have the discussion.
In an effort to drag this thing on beyond 10 o'clock tonight,
I'll be out before you can finish the meeting.
Tony said no good votes happen after 10. I think no good votes happen after 8. You know, I think Select Board Member Handler mentioned that, you know, we have opined on projects like this in the past, and in some ways we have, in some ways we haven't, but I think, one, we probably need to be more consistent as a board if we're going to offer letters of support or not. Again, not for discussion tonight, but what I would say is that if we want to put this back on for a future agenda, what I would like is to hear from, through town administration, what the department heads have to say about this, because that's something we've definitely done on these other projects that we've offered support or lack of support on. So I'd like to hear input from the various departments, assuming this goes on a future agenda.
Just so everybody knows, it was date-driven. I mean, there was a reality that we were asked to have this on the agenda because of a meeting that was coming up, but I think that ship has sailed at this point, and we can all meet together at the subcommittee hearing. So if that's appropriate, then we can move on so that Pete can get home by 10.
Sounds good.
Okay. There again, the law firm presentations. We're just, Tony, you wanted to talk about sequencing them?
Yeah, they're already sequenced. I just wanted to get, so I can let the firms know. So the request was to do one, not have them all at the same night. So the first one is scheduled for Monday the 12th. That's Clifford and Kenny. They're labor only. Responded to the request. The won't be the 19th. Will be the 20th. And that is KP Law will come in. And then on the 26th is Harrington and Heap, which was the third respondent. The last two were for all potential, services. We had them bifurcated in several categories. What I wanted to ask the board is what format do you want them to use in terms of, do you just want them to make a presentation about their firm?
I'm sorry, could we have the discussion outside? I can't hear.
Okay.
Sorry, Tony.
That's okay. Whether the board wants the firm to come in and just give a presentation about the services they offer, and, basically run through their response areas of expertise and that kind of thing, or is there a particular format the board wants me to tell them to abide by? Just so, again, they're prepared when they come in.
Contextually, I think the only one that we have any experience with is KP Law. So, I mean, that discussion probably should be driven by what we do, what we liked about what they've done. I mean, I understand the billables, but there's also if there's problems, what are they and what's their plan to address them? I mean, I think it's pretty fair to say that we've had discussions about getting serial opinions that aren't the same within the organization, just to try to find out if we go forward with them again, which is still a real possibility, what are they going to do to be able to address that so that we can move forward together without that friction in the areas that we're not happy with, because there's areas we are happy with. Well, the other two were just open books. I mean, they've got to come in and make a presentation because we know nothing about them.
Okay.
Well, please. With that said, and clearly, I believe when they come in for their presentations, it'll be a back and forth. We'll be able to
Absolutely.
ask them questions and clarifications. But yeah, I assume that they're just going to come in with their, again, I'm going to backtrack, I'm also going to assume that they've done this many times, and they have a
I was just gonna
presentation
say, they're used to
available,
doing
right?
this, right.
So they're gonna come in with their best presentation, and they're gonna give us their spiel. I hope it has, quite a bit of information within it, but then we can get into the particulars as to, and maybe with the Labor Council, it's a little less intense than with the other two, but, assignment of attorneys, and is it a rotating schedule, is it dedicated staff, whatever it is, and we can get into a little more of the nitty-gritty and response times and things to that we want to just clarify and see how they approach it. And perhaps it's similar to what we currently have, or perhaps it's drastically different. And then I think early on when you came on, Tony, there was something about, potentially entertaining a monthly retainer, things like that we can dig out while they're here, if they don't present it up front.
Okay, yep.
And a PowerPoint up front that we have before they ever enter the room.
Okay, so you want a presentation via PowerPoint or a hard
Any way
copy?
they would like it, but we
Okay.
can't, I think it's kind of hard for us to be able to have them just come in and start hammering us with something where we have no pre-information about it. So
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and I'll quickly interrupt that. I'm not sure they'll provide it, but let's see.
we can ask.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been unclear as to what our expectations are for when they come and sit before us. You had mentioned billables, you had mentioned, Pete mentioned response time. There's a myriad of things that come into what works and what doesn't work for a legal team for a town or a business. I'm still looking for the direction we're going to take it as a board. If we're just going to all ask our individual questions about what we found to be areas of concern for us with the firm that we're using now, and if we're looking to dig into how the two firms who are going to present to us do things differently or similarly, or, we've seen the fee structure, I've seen the fee structure for it all. Just a little unclear on the expectation of what we're going to walk away with when we interview the first one, and then the second one, and the third one. And I know per charter, we've got to...
I'm just doing our due diligence.
Fair enough.
And I think that you're onto something, but if I knew where we were going, then we would be talking outside of the meetings, and we haven't been. So
Exactly.
And get them in front of us, and we'll ask what we want to, and then the board will deliberate about how important each of these things is.
Okay.
I don't think you can go wrong with Michelle Rendazzo or Amy Questle. They're excellent. I do question about KP, who handles the licensing. I do think the firm that handles labor only is very interesting, and they have a great price in terms of a set price for consultation. So I think it's good to delve into this, but I do think with KP Law, on those two attorneys, you can't go wrong. They're stellar performance, but I'm curious to hear what the other firms have to say.
I have no idea, but I will say that I would really like to get administration to weigh in when we get to the point where these discussions happen, so we have some sort of context. But there's nothing more involved than that. We're going to set this up. They're going to come in one meeting at a time, so that they're not going to be competing with each other on that same night.
So if I may, one more point. One of the big keys for me is when we look at billables. And I broke it down into each department to, for myself, get a better understanding of what parts of the town of Harwich are using our legal more and what parts are not using legal as much. It was pretty eye-opening. And to the tune of the budget, with respect to our annual budget and how much we spend on legal, I think it's important for us to understand where it's going and why it's going. It seems like there's been discussion that, we overuse legal. When I looked at those 12 months of legal billable hours, I'm sure there's places we could cut, no question about it. And I think having the form, the request for legal form, I think that will probably help a great deal. But I'd like to know if this board feels that we're using legal too much. And the billable hours are not what they should be for all the things that the town has got to deal with, whether it be lawsuits, whether it be conservation, whether it be the harbor. And there's a lot to it. There wasn't a lot to administration's legal request. Please, Pete, help me.
No, not to help you, but.
Oh, don't mind me.
No, that's what I looked at you, but the discussion about the billable hours, the rate's one thing, but the billable hours, that's an internal discussion. I think we use legal too much, but that's not legal's fault. That's an internal issue, right? So that's not what I'm looking for these folks to present to us. Sure, I want to know what their cost is. Of course, we all do. But I also want to know what their approach is, because maybe they can help the town minimize cost. Maybe they don't, because that's, not what they're in business for. But like Mark alluded to, the Labor Council, their approach seems a little different than what the others do. So that could be a savings there if we need to utilize Labor Council. The others potentially have a path for us to streamline the way in which we handle it internally. So maybe they could actually provide us a little bit of guidance, because the way we utilize it today, I think, is wasteful. I don't think it's a complete waste. Of course, we need legal counsel. I think we could do a better job managing it than has been done historically. The tune now is probably $250,000 a year. That's a big nut in legal cost. Now, it's probably going to go up with some of these other issues that have come up as of the recent past. This year, I don't know what we're tracking, but we could see a $300,000 number with all the recent use of counsel. So it's not all on council's presentation of what I'm looking for that evening. We need to have some discussions on how we better structure the use of council, but I want to hear from them and what they could potentially do to help us as a community.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, through you, I agree with you 100%. I think this board should have had all that information going into discussions with those three legal firms. And that's my last point. I think it would have been helpful to be well-informed of how we have spent our money, so that we can ask questions of the other two firms. Do you see ways that we could reduce our cost of legal? But at this point, we haven't had that discussion yet. So we're going to be going in and just asking what I would consider to be arbitrary questions. But I'll leave it at that.
And I'm going to push back on that. From August, I had a conversation with Amy Questle, and it's not just the sheer volume, it's where it's coming from and whether it was approved. Then we had a format where Tony was going to have the form to go out. And I talked with Amy Questle about this, and this is not headline news to KP Law. I wanted an agreement that any returned opinion from them was CC'd to the board chair and the town administrator, so that we would have a loop. We'd know what went out, and we'd know if everybody followed the process, because if coming back, we got a CC for something that's just dangling out there that nobody got any approval for, that's a process that we need to tighten up for the town. That's something that I plan on bringing back as a discussion. It's not a surprise to them. I've spoken to both Michelle and Amy. What I am concerned about, and it's a process thing, I wonder sometimes whether they're even in the same building, because they don't seem to always connect and talk to each other, depending on what issue it is that you have. That is a potential driver of cost too. If you're not really sure which person is assigned to a particular area, and then one person gives you an opinion one way, which is the other problem we have, and then we have to pay, we pay for all these opinions. So if we get 2 opinions or 3 opinions, we're paying for them even if they're not consistent with each other. So that has to probably stop too, but that's not anything we can do anything about. It has to do with them and their controls, whatever council we get. So there is a discussion to be had that is driven by money, but it also is driven by the process that they follow. And I don't know what that is without getting them in front of us.
And I see it a little differently than you. That's an interesting take, and I appreciate that. But I think we're here now, and I'm looking forward to beginning the discussions with the 3 firms, mainly because the charter determines that we need to do it. and we'll go from there.
Good, we're all committed to that then, so let's make the appointments and see where we go.
Okay.
Okay. Finalist interviews.
So we're all set for doing the TA finalist interviews on Saturday? I am.
We might be here by
No
then.
pun intended. No, we're all set, for Saturday. We're just working this week with the logistics. We'll be providing a packet to each of the board members with the schedule and the layout for the day on Saturday. And Rick's coordinating with each of the candidates. So the board's been asked to, come up with your questions. I know you're working on that, so we have a format for that as well. One of the things that came up, Don, you weren't here, Pete, I think you mentioned it, in terms of timing for the formal interviews in here, with the start time, and then how do we sequence the other two candidates in? Right now, we're allocating an hour and 15 minutes per candidate, and I wrote it down. I think the first was at 12:30, I think. So that would go to 1:45 in the afternoon. So my thought was, just to give everybody an idea, was to slot the next candidate at 1:45, but to make sure they're at least in the building here, 30 minutes prior, ready to go. Or we can leave those other slots vacant, just have the names there. So I'm not sure what the pleasure of the board is, just, again, to make sure they have some idea of where they're going to fit in during the day, but also not to provide dead, come into dead time with the board if you finish with a candidate prior to an hour and 15.
And that was my concern. I think I might have even shared it with you.
You did.
And I know we ran into it with the finance director when we did those interviews. So I don't want to see us sitting here wasting, 15, 20 minutes or a half hour.
Sounds like a good idea.
When the individuals are going to be in the building. So I don't know how we get there. Maybe it's approximate times. But we stuck to the schedule because, we felt that we were obligated to stick to those schedules, those time slots. So perhaps we just put an estimate, and perhaps it just says, an estimate of 1.25 hours or whatever, 1.5 hours per interview. And, but that way, it's a little more fluid for us to potentially get out of here earlier than later that day.
Okay.
Just one question. What time are they going to start, Tony, on Saturday?
The formal interviews in open session will start at 12:30.
What time are we supposed to be here?
Well, we'll send that schedule out once that's finalized
That's-
for you guys, but
It's a lot sooner than that.
Oh, I know we have the other session in the morning
Right.
at 9 o'clock, so, okay. Just a question, is lunch provided?
You'll have to ask the
yeah, it
candidates.
comes in a brown bag. I don't know, does the select board have a fund available for that?
Finance committee has a...
Yeah, those are the logistics things I want to
have no
talk
budget for
with,
that.
with Rick on. There's going to be, probably about an hour of time between 11:30 and 12:30, so the Harwich Channel folks can get in here, make sure the room's all set up, and we'll have your chairs all aligned. So there'll be an hour in there for you if you want to run out, get something to
I'll
eat.
bring my grill.
Bring your grill, yes.
Try not to use this room. All right, town administrator's report.
Let's see. So on the contract front, I did sign a contract with Aqua Point 3 LLC. We've been working through, we have a wastewater permit at the cultural center, the 204 over there, that is how they do the wastewater treatment, but it's an actual wastewater treatment facility. It's not like a septic tank. So right now, when I got here, we were not in compliance because we didn't have somebody operating the plant, as well as we hadn't finished the requirements for the wastewater permit, which required an engineering report to be done. So several phone calls with health department facilities and DEP on this. So Aqua Point is going to be the operator of the facility, so we're going to be good there when they get on board. And then Ty and Bond is working, we're just going to sign the contract with them to actually do the engineering report, which will help to update the wastewater treatment permit, or discharge permit, I should say. Long-term, that just gets us in compliance. Long-term, we need to evaluate what we really need to do, because wastewater discharge permits like that are for over 10,000 gallons a day, which we're clearly not doing there now that it's not a fully operating elementary and middle school. So there'll be decisions down the road for, the next administration and the board to, we figure our way through how we, probably more than likely want to get out from under the discharge permit and go into, I'll call it under Title V, in terms of taking care of, the wastewater from the facility long-term. But we need to get in compliance first. So that's what the Aqua Point 3 contract that I just signed is for them to do the operating and testing and make sure everything is good to go from that standpoint, and then we'll get the engineering report, so.
Tony, excuse me, just one question if I could.
Yep.
That's a shared system. How will the cost apportioned?
It used to be 2 schools. and
You
they
mean
were
in
both
terms of
ours.
who's paying,
Yeah,
where the town's paying for it?
So, okay, so, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not Monomoy, it's Howard?
We own the elementary school
Okay,
at this
all right,
point.
that's clear. Okay, thanks.
I think I talked about the school committee members, so that advertisement's going out. It closes January 23rd, and then we'll have the public meeting after that. Robin Kelly from the cemetery department is going out. She had to have some shoulder surgery next week, so we're looking to try to get somebody to come in and do some temporary help, because believe it or not, I mean, she's been the only person in there for 21 years. And again, moving forward, there's a lot of, I'll say, organizational structure things that need to get looked at. We have these single point failures, I call them, that, especially in that area, people die every day, and there's a lot that goes on, and, having control of 16 cemeteries, and all that knowledge is in one brain right now. So, so we're working on that. Just wanted to keep the board informed. We had a couple of, I'll say, just snow, ice events or whatever. They're just enough to tick you off, but not anything really major. So I just want to give a shout out to the DPW folks. We were all having a 4.5-day break over New Year's. They were in here multiple days, plowing, sanding, trying to keep everything moving in terms of the roadway and safety for the public. So we got a number of positive emails and other things from residents thanking the guys for doing a good job and keeping up with things. So that's it.
Select Board report, Jeff.
I have nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank
Mark.
you.
Just 2 quick things. The DPW did a great job plowing the sidewalks. The only thing I would say for business owners, especially on Main Street.
They own it.
What's that?
They own it, right?
Well, they should take the responsibility of cleaning in front of their buildings, because that deters shopping and potential fall. So I hope that if they're listening, I hope they do that. Second thing is, I attended a meeting this week and I heard from somebody who works at Outer Cape Health Building that they may be relocating to Yarmouth and vacating in Harwich, so.
Who is?
Outer Cape Health.
You're kidding.
No idea.
Better if they relocated from Wellfleet.
Nope, I don't have anything.
Pete?
Maybe we can look at outhouses for the old municipal building.
Yeah, maybe.
It's in a 100-year floodplain. There are periods of time you can only get to it by boat.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moving second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone else can stay.
Thank you.
Jen?
Oh, do we have that?